I-33F have always been the one my friends call the Rock. I'm the dependable planner, the problem solver, the person who quietly makes sacrifices so others don't have to, which is why when my younger brother Ben, 30M, called last summer in desperation, I didn't hesitate to step in, even though doing so would upend every aspect of my life. How it started, Ben had been living in a cramped studio in our hometown of Portland, working as an assistant manager at a boutique coffee shop, when rent rose by 20% and his upstairs neighbor flooded his apartment, destroying his few belongings. He was suddenly homeless. His savings gone on emergency hotel stays. He begged me, "Can I crash with you till I find a place? I live in a two-bedroom loft in Seattle. My partner, Jordan, 35M, works night shifts at the hospital. I'm a graphic designer with a flexible schedule, but a tight freelance pipeline. We'd been saving for a house down payment. Every dollar counted. But I couldn't bear the thought of my little brother on the street. So I told Ben he could move in. I cleared out the guest room, bought him fresh sheets, set aside closet space, and even promised to let him borrow my car for job interviews. 3 months max, I said. Just enough to get you back on your feet. Ben arrived 2 days later, lugging a battered suitcase and a battered ego. He hugged me, teared up, and said, "I owe you." That first week, everything went smoothly. He signed up at a new coffee shop, pitched in for groceries, and even deep-cleaned the bathtub without being asked. Jordan was supportive. He said he admired my generosity. I told myself it was temporary, a kindness that wouldn't derail our lives. Not first cracks. By week 4, the cracks appeared. Ben's new shop was a dead end. The manager scheduled him only 12 hours a week. He spent the rest of his time sleeping till noon, then playing video games in the living room. The emergency fund I'd lent him for job hunting, $1,000, vanished. On flights to visit his ex, Maya, he confessed they were trying again, which he claimed would fix his motivation problems. I nagged gently, "Maybe focus on work first?" He waved me off. My own work schedule frayed. Clients rescheduled deadlines because I was too busy house-sitting. Jordan's night shifts meant he slept afternoons, and Ben treated our living room like a dorm. Dirty dishes piled, pizza. Boxes accumulated, and my carefully curated Spotify playlists were drowned out by Ben's blasting gaming streams. When I asked him to clean up, he snapped, "Chill, sis, I'm stressed." I bit my tongue. The financial spiral month 2 hit with a shock. Our joint bank account was nearly depleted. Our rent, utilities, and savings contributions had been planned around splitting costs 3 ways, but Ben hadn't contributed a dime since week 1. When I reminded him of the $300 monthly share, he sighed. My bank card got cancelled, just forgot to update Amazon Pay. He asked me to cover his share of our upcoming storage locker bill, since all my cash is tied up in bills. I paid it, but the guilt was heavy. Meanwhile, Jordan's savings for dental school applications vanished as he covered groceries to keep us all fed. I started skipping Pilates classes to watch Ben's apartment, driving him to interviews, and making coffee runs at 6 a.m. because that's when he said his resume coach could talk. I was exhausted. My own deadline slipped, and I ate lunch at my desk to work extra hours. The ultimatum: by the end of month 3, every part of my life was in a tailspin. I nearly missed a client pitch because I was stuck helping Ben fix his broken bike chain. Jordan confronted me. "You promised 3 months. We're at 13 weeks. When is this over?" He reminded me of our goals: buying a home, starting our IVF treatments. I felt torn. My heart ached for Ben, but the resentment burned hotter. That night I laid out the terms clearly. Move-out date in 2 weeks. Financial repayment: all the money I'd lent, $1,000 for job hunting, $900 in unpaid rent shares, $200 for storage, total $2,100 due by move-out. Chore schedule: all dishes cleaned daily, common areas tidied, and 0 overnight guests. I read it aloud while Ben scrolled his phone. He bristled. "I thought family meant you'd always have my back." I said, "I do, but I can't lose everything for you." He told me I was cold and ungrateful. He slammed his bedroom door. Drama unfolds the next day. Our landlord emailed to warn that the loft smelled like mold. Complaints from the neighbor below, courtesy of the pizza box pile. The HOA fined us $150 for noise violations. I forwarded the notices to Ben. He grumbled but didn't clean. On the move-out date, he hadn't found a place. He'd procrastinated viewings, convinced Maya to let him move in with her temporarily, in Denver. I'd never agreed to cross-state support. He texted, "Can I stay 2 more weeks while I sort flights?" I refused. He yelled at me in the kitchen, "You're kicking me to the curb." I stood my ground. Then he dropped the bomb. "You're ruining my credit. You'll see me in court for co-signing my storage lease." I'd reluctantly co-signed when he was first evicted, thinking I'd only be liable for 2 months. Now he threatened legal action. I went numb. Jordan put his arm around me and said, "Turn your phone off." Separation Ben left that afternoon. No. Packing no goodbye hug. He texted the next day that he'd moved into Maya's basement and resented me for tossing him into debt. Our family split. Parents called me rude and selfish, saying blood ought to be thicker. Cousins texted, "Wow, you really demonstrated who your priorities are." My friends rallied behind me. "You did your part." Jordan apologized that his patient little sister had snapped. I spent the evening on the phone with the storage company, transferring billing off my name and onto Ben's new address. I cancelled the extra gym membership I'd signed him, took back the car keys and scrubbed my loft spotless. Now I'm rebuilding, refilling our savings, catching up on deadlines, planning our IVF cycle. But every time I pass the guest room, I think of Ben's empty suitcase. I worry I destroyed our sibling bond, but I also know I had to protect my future. I've offered to help remotely, reviewing his resume, checking Craigslist listings, sending him bus fare home. He hasn't replied. So Reddit, AITA for evicting my brother after 3 months of generous support, even though doing so nearly destroyed my career, relationship and financial security. I-35F have always identified as fiercely independent. I bought my condo at 28, paid off my car at 30, and even toured solo through Eastern Europe at 32. No handouts, no safety nets. So when my cousin, Mia, 29F, called me last October, voice shaking, tears streaming, saying she'd been laid off, evicted, and her fiancé, Ethan, 31M, was in the ICU after a car accident, I nearly said no. I pride myself on boundaries, but I couldn't bear the thought of her alone and broke, so I did the unthinkable. I told her she could move into my spare bedroom and stay as long as she needed. The rescue phase, October-December 2024. Mia arrived, with 2 suitcases and her dog Piper, whom she insisted must stay with us. I cleared out my guest room, bought fresh linens and spent an afternoon puppy-proofing the apartment. I told her rent was free, utilities were on me, and the spare car I'd kept for road trips was hers for as long as she lived here. She promised to chip in for groceries once I land a job, and Ethan's medical bills were covered by insurance. Just a waiting game. For the first 2 months, it was fine. Mia used my car to search for jobs, filled out applications in the living room, and her relief was palpable. Piper was a quiet pup, crate-trained and well-behaved. Mia cooked dinner twice a week, helped me clean, and returned my car washed and fueled. I felt proud that I could help family in crisis. The creep-in, January-February 2025. Then, in early January, Mia landed a part-time retail gig. She celebrated by treating herself to new boots and inviting friends over for a post-interview party, complete with karaoke in my living room until 2 a.m. I reminded her I needed quiet for my remote client calls. She apologized but said it was just once. Next, Piper began barking incessantly whenever I worked. Mia insisted I train the dog or buy her a better toy to keep her busy, but I wasn't keen on investing in a pet that wasn't mine. My headphones, which I'd lent to Mia for conference calls, returned scratched and missing their left earpiece. When I asked, she said she must have tripped. By mid-February, groceries I'd bought for my week's meal prep were gone by Wednesday, replaced with generic pasta and store-brand sauce. Mia brushed it off. "Sorry, brain fog, we'll pay you back." But the IOU never arrived. My electric bill spiked because Piper's heater ran 24/7 and Mia left the world on in empty rooms. My life unravels. March-April 2025. I started sleeping in the guest room to escape Piper's midnight whining. My own bedroom had become Mia's home office, her laptop, papers and takeout boxes lining every surface. My clients complained of hissing on video calls. Mia's Zoom background and loud typing sabotaged my professionalism. I found myself apologizing, rescheduling calls and wearing noise-cancelling earmuffs. My weekends disappeared. I spent Saturdays driving Mia to her new temp job 2 counties over, Sundays scrubbing Piper's muddy paws and scrubbing the emergency pancake batter off my stovetop. My social life evaporated. Friends stopped asking me out when I began cancelling every invite. My savings, which I'd earmarked for a down payment, dwindled to nothing as I covered groceries, vet bills for Piper's upset stomach, which Mia claimed was from stress, and even Piper's new winter coat when she seemed cold. The ultimatum, mid-April 2025. By April 15th I snapped. I drafted a bulleted list. Move-out deadline, May 1st, no exceptions. Reimbursement, $950 for groceries, $120 for utilities overages, $80 for vet bills, and $150 for the damaged headphones. Total $1,300 by move-out. House rules. No more parties. Piper must be crated during work hours, and all personal items confined to the spare bedroom. I printed it, taped it to the fridge, and texted Mia. This is non-negotiable. I've been generous, but this house is my sanctuary. That evening I came home to find my living room filled with Mia's half-packed boxes. She'd texted, "Fine, I'll go," and left in a huff, but not before Piper chewed through my favorite floor lamp's power cord. The aftermath: Mia moved out on April 28th, 2 days early, but left me with chewed baseboards on the guest room door, a shattered floor lamp and no attempt to pay for repairs, a final text accusing me of being the worst cousin ever and throwing us out on the street, a stream of social media posts about toxic family and family of origin trauma. My apartment finally feels quiet again, but the damage lingers. I had to call an electrician and pay $200 to replace that lamp. The guest room closet still has Piper's hair embedded in the carpet fibers. I've replaced my down pillow set because of mysterious staining. My own finances are in the red because I paid all of Mia's expenses for 6 months expecting her to reimburse me. My parents are divided. My mum says, "She's family, help her without conditions." My dad says, "You're an adult. You have a right to your boundaries." My best friend says I did the right thing by setting limits before I lost myself entirely. Now, I'm rebuilding. I'm rehiring a house cleaner, reclaiming my workspace, and refilling my savings. But I still feel guilty. Guilty that I forced her out, that I didn't do more, that I should have known better. I've offered Mia a short-term loan for her first month's rent at her new apartment, but she hasn't replied. So, Reddit, AITA for drawing firm boundaries, insisting my cousin and her dog move out and reimburse me after 6 months of temporary help that spiraled out of control, even though it meant protecting my home, my income, and my peace of mind. I, 28F, met Zach, 29Me, in my neighborhood gym class 2 years ago. He was kind, funny, and, crucially, saved me from an exhausting subway commute when he lived just 3 blocks from my apartment. We fell in love quickly, moved in together after 6 months, and bought a fluffy cat named Nimbus. Life felt easy. 6 months ago, though, Zach's older sister, Brooke, 33F, called him in tears. Her husband, Derek, 35M, had been in a horrific motorcycle accident, suffering multiple fractures and a traumatic brain injury. Their 2-year-old son, Ollie, stayed with Derek's parents in another state. But Brooke was completely alone, too grief-stricken to manage her own bills and their mortgage while juggling Derek's care. She begged us, "Could I and Ollie stay with you just until I get on my feet?" I jumped at the chance. I'd always dreamed of being a big sister figure to Ollie, and I felt deeply for Brooke's plight. Zach hesitated. He'd been saving for grad school and worried about logistics, but he trusted me. We cleared out our spare room, ordered a crib, and set up baby-proofing gates around the coffee table. I told Brooke she and Ollie could stay rent-free for 3 months. She promised to help with groceries once she found remote work and to chip in with utilities. The first 2 months, joy and chaos at first, it was everything I'd imagined. Ollie's face lit up when he saw the swing set we installed on our back balcony. I made him pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. Brooke spent mornings job hunting from our dining table. She applied for writing gigs and virtual tutoring, and afternoons visiting Derek in rehab. Zach and I felt proud, even heroic. Our home had become a sanctuary. Nimbus the cat adjusted beautifully. He purred whenever Ollie crawled by, and Ollie became obsessed with chasing Nimbus's tail, always under supervision, of course. Brooke cooked dinner twice a week, spaghetti, stir-fries, hearty soups, and we shared favorite recipes. I reveled in the laughter echoing through our small living room, the pitter-patter of tiny feet, the senseless giggles when Nimbus startled Ollie with a gentle paw tap. The creep. When temporary became permanent, then month 3 arrived, and Brooke's remote job offers fell through. She said clients ghosted her. The market was tough and she was too exhausted to pitch more. I reminded her gently that our 3-month window was almost up. She promised she'd be out by week 13. But week 14 began with her asking, "Could I stay another 2 weeks? Just until I close this contract." 2 weeks passed. Then Brooke's parents visited and accidentally broke our antique vase. They left it glued back together with super glue on our mantelpiece and never apologized. I realized our groceries had doubled. Smoke alarms chimed. Nightly, because Brooke left the oven on, Ollie's diapers alone cost over $200 a month. And our electric bill spiked when she set the heat at 80°F to keep Ollie warm. Nimbus started hiding under the bed, hissing whenever Brooke entered the room. Zach found beer cans in the recycling bin. He knew Brooke didn't drink, but realized she'd help herself to his stash of craft IPAs without asking. When he confronted her, Brooke said, "I thought sharing was what families do." He sighed and let it go. Life unravels. My career, my relationship, my sanity. By month 4, my freelance UX projects were tanking. Clients complained of missed deadlines. I was interrupted every hour by Brooke's frantic texts. "Derek just called, I need a ride to the hospital," or "Ollie won't nap, I need you to watch him." I'd built a makeshift nursery in our tiny office nook, negotiating conference call times around nap schedules. My bank account was drained. I'd covered extra groceries, $300 week, Uber rides for Brooke's interviews, 60 trip, and a new car seat after theirs, mysteriously cracked. Zach was snapping at me nightly, frustrated I never cooked dinner or spent time with him anymore. He said, "I miss my girlfriend," and I felt like a ghost in my own apartment, the live-in nanny, not his partner. Nimbus began refusing to use his scratching post, shredding our couch cushions instead, until we realized it was stressed behavior. My own friends stopped inviting me out. I'd cancel last minute when Brooke needed me. I stopped returning texts. My gym membership went unused, my yoga mat gathered dust, and I found myself sobbing in the shower before work calls. The breaking point, when enough was enough an evening, I returned home from a 12-hour workday to find Brooke hosting a loud baby shower for herself, complete with 15 guests. My living room was strewn with deflated balloons, half-eaten cupcakes and greasy plates in the sink. She'd never mentioned a shower. Her sister from another city had flown in, her friends had RSVP'd, and I was expected to just let it happen. I texted Brooke, "This is my home and you can't throw parties without asking. You've overstayed your welcome." Her response, "I've done nothing but be a good guest. You ugly big city people don't understand family." She added a crying while laughing emoji. That night I hardly slept. Nimbus yowled in distress. Zach and I talked at 3 a.m. "I love my sister," he said, "but she's crushing your life." We decided together I'd draft an ultimatum. The ultimatum and fallout, I posted a note on the fridge. Move out date, May 31st. Expenses owed, $2,400, groceries, utilities, rides. No more guests without explicit permission. I handed it to Brooke, voice trembling. "You need to honor this. I can't lose my job, my relationship, and my cat over this." She stared, lip quivering, then grabbed her car keys, scooped up Ollie, and burst out, "Fine. I guess we'll figure it out on the street." She slammed the door so hard pictures rattled. Zach immediately called their parents to help, but they insisted Brooke stay wherever she wanted. Derek's rehab team said our home was the best environment for Ollie. Messages flooded my phone. "You owe family. We're here for her. Thanks for thanks." My bank balance was wiped by joint family contributions to Brooke's spiraling debt. For her therapy and nanny help, they said. Reclaiming. My life Brooke and Ollie finally moved on June 5th, over 4 days with the moving van arriving at dawn. They left behind a ruined love seat, a stack of ripped baby blankets, and a sticky residue from party decorations that took me 2 weekends to scrub. My electric bill was in arrears, my freelance reputation tarnished, and Nimbus now cowers behind the couch whenever I entertain. Yet as I sit at my restored desk, Nimbus curled at my feet, Zach asleep on the couch, I realize I'm breathing again. I've rebuilt my bank account, apologized, finally, to my clients, and booked a weekend getaway with old friends. We've started couples therapy to heal the resentment that built up. Nimbus is getting extra treats and a new scratching post. So Reddit, AITA, am I the a-hole for finally evicting my sister-in-law and her son after 6 months of temporary help that spiraled into full-time caregiving, financial strain, and emotional exhaustion, even though they truly needed support? I, 34F, have always taken pride in being the go-to friend, the one who drops everything to help, organizes everyone's celebrations, and quietly picks up the pieces when life explodes. But this past year tested my limits in ways I couldn't have imagined, and left me wondering if I was ever the generous friend I thought I was. Here's the long version of why I asked my best friend Marisol, 33F, and her 2 kids to leave, and why I'm still riddled with guilt meeting Marisol and I met in grad school 8 years ago. She was brilliant, driven, and had the kind of warmth that drew people in. After graduation, she returned home to our small coastal town to be close to family, while I moved to the city for a corporate marketing job. Despite our distance, we kept in touch weekly, texts, calls, birthday weekends. When she discovered she was pregnant with twins at age 30 and learned her fiancé had walked out, I promised I'd help however I could. The invitation in February. 2024, Marisol hit rock bottom. She'd lost her remote tutoring contract, her car broke down, she'd been denied most rental applications because of the twins, and her savings were gone. Her parents were elderly and living in assisted care. She had no siblings, and her twins, Luna and Nico, then 2, needed stable childcare. In a panic, she called me. "I can't do this alone, please, can I come live with you?" My 1-bedroom apartment in the city center wasn't huge, but I had a pull-out couch and a spare dresser. I wrote my lease guarantor an apologetic email, bought extra linens and told Marisol, "You and the kids can stay as long as you need. No rent, just help me figure out a routine." The honeymoon phase. At first, Marisol was a dream guest. She applied for dozens of jobs daily, baked thank you muffins, and let me collapse on the couch after work with a glass of wine. Luna and Nico were polite, hugged me at bedtime and giggled over our cat socks. I reconfigured my small dining table into a kids' art station and stocked the fridge with toddler-approved snacks. Marisol stocked the pantry with her favorite grains and paid for her own toiletries. We cheered when she landed a part-time writing gig in April. She was overjoyed. Growing pains. In June, things began to unravel. Marisol's part-time writing gig paid only $200 a week. She said she was auditioning for more work, but her laptop kept crashing. Her kids needed daycare, and full-time was a $200 a month. I offered to cover half, thinking it was temporary. Then her carpool arrangement fell through, and she asked to borrow my car daily. I agreed, but the oil needed changed, and my parking spot was leased separately. I had to scramble for street parking. Meanwhile, Luna and Nico got clingier. They crawled onto my office desk during my Zoom calls, pulled down my notes, and once spilled rainbow paint all over my white rug. Marisol apologized profusely and promised replacement, but the rug stain wouldn't budge. She ordered a cheap replacement online, but it arrived 2 months later, the wrong size, and left skid marks on my hardwood. Burden on my relationship. My partner, Sam, 36M, was supportive but frustrated. He'd moved in 6 months before Marisol arrived and now felt like a third wheel in his own home. Our evening runs stopped because I stayed in to be backup toddler care. Date nights faded as we juggled Marisol's schedule and Luna's bedtime. I found myself snapping at Sam over small things, leaving a sock on the floor, forgetting to take out the trash. He told me gently, "We agreed this was temporary. It's become our entire life." Financial strain. By August, my joint account with Sam was nearly empty. I'd been covering groceries, $600 a month instead of the usual $250, plus daycare costs beyond what I'd budgeted. I helped Marisol pay off an unexpected $800 vet bill for Socks, who'd terrorized her kids on day one, and lent her $1,000 to cover a hotel when our building's plumbing flooded her side of the couch. She promised to pay me back, but every month she said, "I'm waiting for the paycheck." One morning I logged into my bank to see an overdraft fee, courtesy of an auto debit for Marisol's daycare share. I'd forgotten to transfer funds. I groaned when I saw the $35 charge, and jealousy flared when I realized I hadn't bought new clothes in 6 months. The breaking point September arrived, and Marisol's writing gig ended. She still hadn't found a full-time role. The twins were on my pull-out couch nightly, turning it into a bouncy castle. I found empty snack bags under my bed, diapers left in my hamper, and cut little footprints of sticky handprints all over my new IKEA shelves. My morning coffee routine was disrupted by urgent cries, "Auntie, show me the Paw Patrol!" One Wednesday evening, I was late to a crucial client presentation. A mix-up with the car keys, Marisol had used them and left them in the lock, made me miss the first 10 minutes of my pitch. The client was unimpressed. I returned home seething to find Marisol had invited her new boyfriend Javier over without asking. He was sprawled on my couch drinking my wine, petting Socks. Marisol waved. "Sorry, he needed a place to crash. It's only fair. He's paying us rent." I stared at them, then stormed into my bedroom to cry. Drawing the line that night, Sam and I sat on my tiny balcony, lit only by string lights. He held my hand and said, "You're drowning. We need to protect our life." I nodded, tears streaming. The next morning I typed an email, cold, bullet-pointed. "Deadline, you, Luna, and Nico must move out by November 1st. Reimbursement. Please repay $2,750 for groceries, daycare, car expenses, vet bill, and overdraft fees by move-out. Guests, no one but you and the kids allowed after October 15th. I hit send before I could second-guess myself. My stomach churned, but a heaviness lifted. The fallout Marisol reacted explosively. She called me heartless and the worst friend ever, texted at 3 a.m. "Good luck finding anyone else who'll do what you did." She changed the locks on my spare bedroom door. Nobody uses a spare bedroom for toddlers, so I had to kick it in to get her list of owed expenses she'd taped to the wall. Sam and I watched her load 2 carloads of stuff, the twins stained, couch cover draped over the roof rack, and drive off with Javier. The parking spot, and at least one of my favorite mugs, were gone. I spent the next week repairing the spare bedroom door, ordering new rugs, because the twins had used the old one as a slip and slide, and hiring a cleaner for 2 days to remove. Crayon still lodged in the grout. My bank account slowly recovered, but my heart still aches. Now, it's mid-November. I've reclaimed quiet mornings, date nights with Sam, and my full closet of clothes. Socks has returned to napping on my keyboard instead of darting for the couch edges. I've replaced my lost mugs, reimbursed the cleaner's fee out of pocket, and started freelancing extra hours to rebuild savings, but I can't shake the guilt. Friends are divided. Some say I had every right, that I should never have let it go on so long. Others whisper, blood is thicker, family first. I offered Marisol a reference for writing gigs once she's back on her feet, but she hasn't replied to that email or any of the repayment reminders. So here I am, torn between relief at my restored peace and shame that I wasn't stronger or kinder sooner. Am I the a-hole for evicting my best friend and her kids after 6 months? Of temporary help, insisting on reimbursement for my costs and drawing a hard boundary, even though she truly needed me? I, 31F, have always believed in it takes a village when it comes to new moms. So when my co-worker and friend Danielle, 30F, texted me last fall, freshly postpartum and on the brink of postpartum depression. I didn't hesitate to offer my spare room for as long as she needed. What happened over the next 6 months nearly destroyed my career, my relationship and my own mental health, and I'm tormented wondering if I was the a-hole for finally putting my foot down. The plea Danielle and I met 3 years ago at our marketing agency. We bonded over endless cups of chai and commiserated on late nights meeting deadlines. When she got pregnant, I threw her a little Zoom baby shower, helped assemble her crib and generally cheered her on, until one especially grueling day in September, she texted, "Hey, you know I'm not off maternity leave until next March, but my mum had a stroke. Dad's dealing with chemo and my husband's traveling for work. My rent's due, I'm falling behind on hospital bills, and my landlord's threatening eviction. I have nowhere to go, nowhere to turn. I don't want to send baby Noah to NICU childcare yet. Can I stay with you for a bit? I know it's crazy, but I'm desperate. My boyfriend, Mitch, and we're 33M, and I live in a roomy 2-bedroom townhouse in a good school district." I messaged him, "Bestie needs help. I want to say yes." He sighed but nodded. "Just don't let it wreck your life." I cleared out the spare room, stocked the closet with baby supplies I'd bought for a potential future, and told Danielle, "This is your home until you get back on your feet. No rent, no deadlines. Family is family." The early days, support. And Hope Week 1 was overwhelming, but heartwarming. I'd never held a newborn before, but I figured it out. Midnight feedings, diaper runs, burp cloth laundry. Danielle was a saint. She prepped freezer meals, insisted I tackle client projects uninterrupted, and sent me sweet thank you texts every morning. Noah slept in his bassinet beside my bed. I got to watch his first smile, first coo. Mitch even helped install the baby monitor on our living room TV so we could keep an eye on him during conference calls. By December, Danielle had arranged a payment plan with her landlord and filed for more maternity benefits, but nothing moved fast enough. She extended her stay past Thanksgiving, but everyone agreed it was for a good cause. Christmas morning, she presented me with a homemade quilt she'd made between naps. "For all the love you gave us," she said, tears in her eyes. I melted. Cracks began to show. January arrived and my workload ramped up. Our agency was pitching a 6-figure account, and I was lead on the deck. But Danielle's anxiety was through the roof. After a feverish spike one night, she insisted I watch Noah while she rushed him to urgent care. False alarm, thank God, but my stress spiked. She asked me to cancel my Saturday to drive her to 7 different doctor appointments across the city, thinking I was a free UberX. Meanwhile, Noah's nighttime fussiness escalated. Danielle would pass him off at 3 a.m. with a "your turn," then sleep for another 3 hours. Mitch's patience wore thin. He'd planned weekend ski trips with me, but instead found me bleary-eyed, blearily microwaving cold coffee at 5 a.m. He grumbled, "I miss my partner." I snapped back, "I'm supporting my friend." He backed off, but I could see the hurt. Financial and emotional toll. By February, my bank account was in the red. I'd covered groceries for 3 expensive diapers and formula when Danielle's unemployment check bounced and even tipped every Uber ride because I can't handle the subway with Noah. I sold some of my freelance stock photos for cash, but still wasn't breaking even. When I gently asked Danielle to chip in even $200 a month toward utilities, she teared up. "I'm so sorry, I just can't right now." There went another $80 heating bill, another $120 grocery run. I was chronically exhausted. My presentation to the big client bombed when I fell asleep mid-slide, and they pulped our pitch deck without a callback. My boss pulled me in. "What's going on? You've missed every deadline for the last 3 weeks." I lied. "Family emergency." She frowned but assigned someone else. The breaking point March arrived, 6 months after Danielle moved in. The agency had hired a nanny for Noah at my recommendation, thank God, but Danielle still leaned on me for everything else. She stalked my email calendar asking if she could squeeze in her therapy call there. She left dirty bottles in the sink, stray pacifiers under my couch, and goat cheese crumbs on my workspace. Once, when I asked her to tidy up, she shouted, "I'm already a terrible mother and now I'm a burden to you too," and stormed off to the spare room, slamming doors so hard the floor vibrated. That night, Mitch and I had our first real fight. He said, "I'm worried about you. This isn't you." I cried, "I can't just abandon her and baby Noah. She has no one." He placed a hand on my arm. "Yes, you can. You have to." I nodded, heart breaking. The ultimatum. The next morning, I taped a note to the fridge. Move out deadline. April 15th. Reimbursement, $1,500 toward groceries, utilities, and Uber rides. Deposit allowed. House rules. Clean bottles immediately. Do your own laundry. No last-minute appointment requests outside normal work hours. I texted Danielle. "I love you, but I have to save my job and my relationship. I hope you understand." By the time I shut my laptop, my phone was buzzing. Danielle screamed she'd never forgive my selfishness and that I was worse than my landlord. Her texts kept coming all night. Caps lock, angry emojis, pleas for just 2 more weeks. Aftermath. On April 14th, Mitch found Danielle loading 4 trash bags of her things into her SUV. She'd stayed silent all morning, stoic. Noah sat in his car seat staring at me with wide eyes. I walked over, knelt and whispered, "I'm sorry." But she looked away. She drove off without another word. My townhouse feels emptier than ever. I'm still dealing with phantom cries at 3 a.m., as if my muscle memory expects to check on Noah. I've been demoted at work. Management took over the account. Mitch is better, but it'll take time to rebuild trust. My savings are gone, and I'm relearning how to sleep past 6 a.m. Months later, Danielle emailed once asking for a reference. I never replied. She posted a hashtag to our toxic roommate on Instagram tagging me for abandoning a girl in need. Mutual friends are split. Some say, "You had to do what was best for you." Others whisper, "Shame on you." So, Reddit. Am I the a-hole for evicting my postpartum friend and her infant after 6 months of temporary help, insisting on repayment and boundaries, even though she truly had nowhere else to go, and I deeply empathized with her struggles? I, 30 Wimmers, have always prided myself on being the safe harbor for friends in crisis, someone who'll drop everything to help a buddy grab a foothold when life gets knocked out from under them. But after a year of hosting my college roommate, Alex, 29 mem, in my 1-bedroom apartment, I'm left feeling like I was the one shipwrecked. It began last April, when Alex lost his job at a tech startup and discovered, to his horror, that his girlfriend of 5 years had quietly moved out, leaving him with an eviction notice and an empty bank account. He called me, voice trembling, begging if he could crash on my couch just until I figure something out. I agreed. No rent, just help me pay utilities when you can, which he swore would be in a couple weeks. For the first 2 months, he was a model guest. He applied to jobs relentlessly, pitched in with groceries and even refinished my balcony floorboards on weekends. But then his unemployment drag set in. Rejections piled up, motivation drained away, and the just until stretched past job interviews, past new application seasons, past the point where I could plausibly claim I'd done enough. By month 3, he was freeloading full-time, borrowing my car for networking that never yielded anything, eating my groceries down to freezer burn, and commandeering my home office for quiet workspace despite my own freelance deadlines. Tipped gently at first, "Hey, maybe get a library pass so I can Zoom." But Alex looked hurt, reminded me that he was depressed, that he didn't sign up for this, and implied I was abandoning him if I complained. Month 4 saw my rent account dip dangerously low. I'd covered his half of utilities for 2 months running, fronted all the cleaning supplies when I caught him leaving old pizza boxes under my couch. "You're a lifesaver," he'd said, and paid a surprise vet bill when his cat Murph got sick in my living room. I guilt-texted him a spreadsheet of who owed what, including the $450 in groceries, $120 in utilities, and $300 in Lyft rides he'd run up for interviews, but he promised to repay when I land the next contract. It never happened. My work performance cratered. Clients complained about my tardy responses. I missed proposal deadlines, and a long-planned trip to see my family slipped down the drain. My own savings for a car down payment evaporated. In month 6, I confided in my girlfriend Jess, 28F, that I was drowning under Alex's inertia. She begged me to draw a line, reminded me I had to value my own stability. But every time I tried to broach the eviction, Alex would sob about being betrayed, apologize profusely, and vow to get back on track if I'd just grant him 2 more weeks. Those 2 weeks became another 2 months of dead-end freelancing gigs, of my couch cushions smelling like reheated takeout, of my cat cafe membership going unused because my whole social life had to revolve around Alex's unpredictable schedule. Then one Saturday, after waking to find my TV and soundbar gone, Alex had borrowed them to host a watch party for his little community meetup, and a utility bill in my name for over $300 thanks to his 24/7 space heater use, I exploded. I texted him a bullet list, deadline to move out by end of the month, one $200 repayment schedule, no more borrowing of any kind. He erupted, calling me heartless, the worst friend, texting our mutual friends to shame me, and threatening to expose me as the roommate from hell. True to form, on move-out day, he packed in silence, dropped off a $100 check for gas money, and left without saying goodbye. I've since changed locks, deep-cleaned my apartment, replaced my soundbar out of pocket, and barely slept a wink. My bank account is back in the black, my work is steady again, and my relationship with Jess is healing, but my trust is in tatters. I can't decide if I was a hero who finally stood up for himself or a villain who kicked a friend when he was down. Am I the a-hole for evicting my long-struggling friend and demanding repayment, even though he genuinely needed a place to land? 32F am a freelance illustrator who spent the last 5 years building a cozy, plant-filled loft I'm proud of, my sanctuary after long deadlines and pixel-perfect revisions. But when my college roommate, Jenna, 33F, showed up at my door last October, suitcase in hand, I felt I couldn't refuse her desperate plea. Her husband had just filed for divorce, she'd been ousted from their joint apartment with no notice, and she'd burned through her savings on rent and legal fees. She begged, voice cracking. Just until I get back on my feet and I offered my spare bedroom, I told her, "Take as much time as you need. I'll cover the rent and utilities. You just focus on yourself." At first, Jenna was the perfect houseguest, quiet, grateful, up at dawn to job hunt from my kitchen table and asleep by 10 p.m. She bought groceries for us once she landed a part-time copywriting gig, and even arranged a monthly massage with my therapist's recommendation, explaining self-care was her priority. Our evenings were gentle. We'd cook soup in the slow cooker, catch up on horror podcasts, and water my succulents together. She treated my loft like a retreat, and I felt a rush of pride in helping my oldest friend. Then, November turned into December, and just until stretched past the holidays. Jenna's part-time work evaporated when her contract ended, and the positions she'd interviewed for ghosted her. She explained candidly, I believed her, that she was depressed, grieving the collapse of her marriage and struggling to muster energy for applications. I covered her portion of the rent twice more, deposited grocery money into her account when she ran dry, and lent her my car to get to interviews. I even let her borrow my work laptop when hers failed, only to discover a week later it was missing from my office desk, presumed stolen when she left it at a cafe. She swore she'd replace it, then apologized when the repair quote topped $500 and her bank account was still transitioning. By January, my routine was chaos. My freelance drawings piled up, clients complained of late deliverables, and my bank balance dipped alarmingly. I was taking on extra commissions to compensate, but nights blurred into dawns as I ran the print shop, filed invoices, and then crawled into bed beside Jenna at 1 a.m., only to be awakened 2 hours later by her pacing and tears over how worthless I feel. My own mental health frayed as I tried to console her, rehearse job leads, and stop my plumbing from freezing in the January cold because I'd skipped maintenance to pay her utility share. My partner, Miles, 34 OM, watched helplessly as our home transformed into Jenna's makeshift counseling center. He lost weekends to chauffeuring her to charity networking events, then came home to discover our freezer cleared out for her comfort food. He'd planned a surprise anniversary dinner at home, but Jenna insisted she had nowhere else to eat. So he cancelled our reservations and cooked a meal fit for 4, even though he and I had agreed to splurge on just the 2 of us. I apologized to him repeatedly, but the resentment leaked into our marriage. He stopped hugging me at the door, and I began forgetting to return his calls. By February, I realized I'd loaned Jenna nearly $4,000, rent, utilities, groceries, laptop repairs, therapy co-pays, yet she hadn't tracked a single new opportunity. When I gently suggested she reach out to our mutual friend, Luis, who hired copywriters, she snapped, "You don't get it. I'm unhireable right now." I asked her to map out a 3-month plan. She refused, flinging back, "I didn't. Asked to have my life implode." I apologized again, but the tension in my chest tightened. My clients were threatening to replace me, Miles was considering moving out, and my once-beloved loft felt like a stage for Jenna's despair. One night, in late March, I awoke to the stench of smoke. Jenna had taken my expensive hand-poured candles, melted them in the fireplace, even though my landlord's rules prohibited it, and left scorched stains on the hearth. I burst into her room to find 3 half-melted jars and a charred throw blanket. Jenna looked up bleary-eyed and mumbled, "It helps me sleep." I snapped, "This is my home and you've trashed it from one end to the other." Her face crumpled. She told me I'd betrayed her friendship by accusing her of wrongdoing. That was my breaking point. The next morning, I drafted a stark email, no warm-ups, just bullet points. Move-out deadline, April 30th. Repayment owed $350 for rent, utilities, groceries, laptop repair, candle damages. House rules until then. No borrowing of property, no guests, daily cleanup of all personal areas. I sent it with a gulp, knowing I'd forever scar our 15-year friendship. Jenna called me a dozen times, left voicemails begging forgiveness, accusing me of ruining her last connection to stability, and texted our high school friends to shame me. When April 30th arrived, she packed her things in silence, dropped a check for $200 on my desk and drove away without a word. The empty foyer echoed for days. Now, with Jenna gone, I've replaced my laptop, repainted the fireplace mantel, and rebuilt my freelance schedule. Miles and I are tentatively healing our marriage. He's agreed to couples therapy after months of distance. But every time I water my succulents, I see the bare spot Jenna pruned away, and my heart clenches with guilt. I understand she was in crisis, but I also sacrificed my financial security and personal well-being to keep her afloat. I wonder if I should have found compassion without enabling her withdrawal, or if I was cruel for enforcing boundaries she didn't want to accept. So, Reddit, am I the a-hole for evicting my long-struggling friend after 6 months of helping her rebuild and demanding reimbursement for the thousands I covered on her behalf, even though she genuinely had nowhere else to go? I, 32F, met my college roommate Claire, 33F, for Sunday brunch almost a year ago, when she showed up at my apartment unannounced, suitcase in hand, announcing her marriage had collapsed overnight and she was sleeping in her car. I bleary-eyed, invited her in, then installed her in the spare bedroom, promising rent-free shelter, just until you sort things out. I'd always considered myself generous. I'd volunteered to foster her rescue dog Remy, lent her my car when she needed to interview for jobs, even let her raid my pantry for weeks on end. So I never imagined offering one small kindness would so completely hijack my life. At first, Claire threw herself into rebuilding. She applied to a dozen marketing roles, cooked me elaborate dinners twice a week, and spent evenings curled up reading poetry to calm her frazzled nerves. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, just until stretched into month after month. Her resume revisions gave way to midday naps. Her weekly dinners dwindled to ordering takeout on my dime. Remy's midnight barking became a constant alarm. By month 4, my own freelance design deadlines were sliding off my calendar because Claire insisted I drive her across town to therapy and coffee shop co-working spaces she never actually worked, in or while borrowing my laptop, just for research, and sending dozens of frantic voice notes begging for pep talks. I paid her share of utilities for 2 more cycles, even though she hadn't contributed a cent. convinced she would soon land a contract. Instead, she hired an expensive life coach who came to my kitchen table twice a week and left invoices for her transformation sessions. My bank account bled dry, my social life evaporated, and my boyfriend, Ethan, 34M, began sleeping on his own in the guest room, complaining that he no longer recognized our home. It had become Claire's therapy center, drop-in dog, park and satellite office. I tried subtle hints, replacing Claire's nightly $12 lattes with instant coffee at home, gently suggesting she check Craigslist for temporary sublets, even blocking her streaming playlists during my Zoom calls. Each time she would burst into tears, clutch my arm and whisper, "How can I ever repay you?" until I'd relent and cover another week of groceries and vet bills. On the night I missed an urgent pitch meeting because I was driving Claire to a midnight emergency vet appointment for Remy, who turned out to have eaten one of my ceramic planters, something inside me snapped. I came home to shards of terracotta and drenched soil matted into my rug, Claire asleep on my couch clutching her phone, pleading for me to forgive her latest disaster. And I realized I was the one asking for forgiveness now, every single day. So one frigid March morning I taped a crisp single-sentence note on her bedroom door. "Please gather your things and vacate by April 1st. I need my life back." I left it there, heart pounding, and when she found it she howled at the injustice of it, screamed that I'd abandoned her when she was at her lowest, and called me the worst friend in existence before dragging Remy out to my hallway and rippling police report threats. In the silence that followed, I changed my locks, removed her mail from my box, and began the slow work of repairing my finances and my relationship with Ethan, who crept back into my arms with cautious apologies. My apartment is peaceful again. No dog barks at dawn, no life coach invoices litter my countertops, but every time I water my plants, I wonder if I was too harsh, if I should have endured another month, another therapy appointment, another shattering of a planter, in the name of compassion. So Reddit, AITA for finally evicting my long-struggling friend and her dog after nearly a year of temporary refuge, demanding that she reclaim her own life, even though she truly needed mine. I, 34F, have always believed that a true friend never lets another struggle alone. So when my childhood best friend Clara, 34F, landed in my city last September, freshly divorced, her savings drained on legal fees, and no place to go after. Her landlord locked her out for missed rent. I opened my 2-bedroom condo without hesitation and told her she could stay as long as she needed. Clara arrived with 2 enormous suitcases, her cat Marcel in a battered carrier, and her eyes red from crying. I immediately rearranged my living room into her sleeping area, lent her my spare car for job interviews, and stocked the pantry with her favorite snacks. At first, things went as planned. Clara spent her days pounding the pavement for jobs in marketing. She cooked dinner thrice weekly, and Marcel stuck close by, a quiet house guest. But just until you get back on your feet. Stretched past promised 2 weeks, then a month, then 3, and suddenly my neat, peaceful home felt like a communal crash pad. By month 4, Clara's gig economy projects had dried up. She had no reliable income, and she began draining my bank account in discrete increments, remembering to borrow $200 here for cat food, asking for $150 there to replace household items. I thought I broke. And then, more frequently, slipping cash requests into conversation. My Bank of America account got frozen. I haven't received my unemployment yet. Can you cover utilities this month? I covered everything, convinced the next big contract would materialize, but Clara's interview updates became vague promises, her LinkedIn messages silent, and her cat care responsibilities less carefully managed. Marcel scratched my furniture, peed on my rugs, and once darted onto my keyboard during a client Zoom, causing me to miss an entire pitch call. My freelance illustration deadlines piled up. I found myself apologizing to clients, rescheduling meetings, and working through nights while Clara binge-watched true crime documentaries on my couch, headphones in her ears, not even asking if the volume was too loud for my video calls. Meanwhile, my partner Ben, 36M, who'd moved in 6 months earlier, saw our shared dreams of saving for a house evaporate. Our savings account plunged into the red as I covered Clara's cat vet bills, drove her to unpaid job fairs out of town, and paid for her to take a quick weekend self-care retreat at a friend's cabin 2 hours away, only to discover she'd extended to a full week and left the heat blasting at 80 degrees the entire time, doubling our gas bill. When I asked Clara to set a move-out date, she burst into tears and said she couldn't go back to her hometown because her ex-husband had full custody of her daughter, Sophie, and she feared losing visitation. She begged for just one more month to find a solution. That month turned into another. I began to resent every text alert, every knock on my door, every meowing duel between Marcel and my cat Willow. My relationship with Ben became tense. He would come home to half-eaten ice cream tubs in the sink, empty wine bottles by the bedside, and my despair as I locked myself in our bedroom to make frantic calls about Clara's overdue rent payments. One night, exhausted after leading a critical client presentation that nearly fell apart, because I was 2 hours late picking up Marcel from an emergency kitty daycare, I walked into the living room to find Clara hosting a boozy housewarming party for herself, despite having lived there for 5 months, complete with 15 friends sprawled on my couch, candles stolen from my shelves, and Marcel hopped up on catnip, weaving through spilled drinks and stepping on a lit taper that almost burned my throw pillows. I watched from the doorway as Clara laughed and slipped my phone into her purse when I tried to take photos of the damage for our landlord. My chest tightened. I realized I hadn't slept more than 4 consecutive hours in weeks. I was panic attacking at grocery stores trying to buy cat food for 2, and my bank owed hundreds in overdraft fees. At 2 a.m., I tiptoed into Clara's makeshift room and taped a simple note on the door. Please gather your things and vacate by the 15th. I can no longer host you. By morning, my note was shredded on the floor, Marcel's carrier was gone, and Clara had moved her bed into my office to stay close. I hunted her down at a nearby cafe where she'd fled, pillow in hand, and handed her plane ticket I'd booked to send her back to her hometown with a one-way date of the 15th. Her face twisted in fury. She accused me of betrayal, said I was using her like a charity case, and threatened to report me to our mutual college alumni group as a predatory roommate. I stood my ground. I loved Clara since we were 5, but I couldn't sacrifice my livelihood, my relationship, or my mental health any longer. She left on the 15th with Marcel tucked under her arm, texting me only once, "You'll regret this," and blocking my number. My condo feels silent again, too silent sometimes, but my clients are happy, Ben and I are repairing trust, and my savings are finally recovering. Yet every time I swipe my key into the lock, I wonder if I should have been more patient, more compassionate, more generous. So, Reddit AITA for evicting my lifelong friend and her cat, after 5 months of temporary refuge that cost me nearly everything I'd worked for. I, 29F, have always prided myself on being the good neighbor, the one who waters everyone's plants when they're away, feeds the community cats, and volunteers at the local food bank. So when my co-worker and friend Nina, 30F, showed up at my doorstep this past August, dazed and suitcase in hand, I couldn't say no. Her landlord had abruptly sold her apartment, her savings were tied up in medical bills after her car accident, and her only family lived across the country. With genuine worry, she asked if she could crash in my spare room for a couple weeks tops. I cleared out the old painting supplies, dusted off the sheets, and told her, "You and your cat Milo are welcome here for as long as you need. No rent, no deadlines. Just focus on getting back on your feet." The grace period. For the first month, Nina was the guest from heaven. She cooked us homemade curries twice a week, repaid me by restocking my cereal stash, and Milo, an impeccably litter-trained tuxedo cat, slept curled on my office chair while I worked. She tirelessly pounded the pavement for apartment viewings and minor freelance gigs, and her gratitude glowed in every text. "I don't know what I'd do without you." My partner, Cal, 31M, even joined in, building Milo a new scratching post and helping Nina set up a temporary P.O. box for her mail. I thought, this is exactly what friendship is for. The creep in then. September slipped into October, and for reasons I still can't fully grasp, Nina's luck stalled. Her accident meant she was ineligible for some of the more lucrative freelancing. Platforms and the apartments she qualified for were snapped up before she could submit her deposit. She began sleeping later and later, often still in bed when I left for work at 7:30 a.m., and Milo's feeding schedule fell out of sync, leaving him knocking over my water glass at midnight. I gently reminded her, "Maybe set an alarm." And she apologized, promising she'd be more mindful. Meanwhile, she started to treat my living space like her own. She'd borrow my headphones for her noisy webinars and leave the volume up so high I could hear presentation slides narrating at 2 a.m. My reusable grocery bags vanished. I later found them stuffed under her desk, her project supplies. And groceries we'd stocked for communal dinners, milk, eggs, kale, were suddenly replaced with her single-serve frozen meals and energy drinks, which I discovered strewn in the recycling bins. When I mentioned restocking the communal staples, Nina looked hurt. "You're micromanaging my life now," she said, then retreated to her room with Milo. Financial and emotional toll. By November, my checking account was alarmingly low. I'd covered her share of utilities twice, each time she swore she'd transfer the money as soon as I get paid. I'd paid for Milo's vet check after he fell sick from eating a moth when Nina was out of town visiting her parents, and I'd loaned her $400 to replace her stolen laptop charger. In return, her contributions had dwindled to sporadic "I'll Venmo you later" texts that never materialized. My own freelance deadline slipped as I took on extra client work to recover my finances, only to find myself dozing at my desk because Nina's Zoom calls echoed through the thin walls. Cal's patience evaporated. He'd planned a weekend getaway for our anniversary, flights and Airbnb paid in full, but we had to postpone when Nina begged for a lift to an out-of-state interview, which blew our car budget for the month. Our shared savings, earmarked for a down payment on a place of our own, was now half of what it had been 2 months prior. I felt torn between loyalty to a friend in crisis and loyalty to the life Cal and I were building. Boundary attempts and backlash. In late November, I decided to assert boundaries. I printed a simple chore chart, laundry on Tuesdays, dishes at the end of each day, and a shared grocery list, and taped it to the fridge. I also posted a note. "Please remember to feed Milo twice daily, and if you use my headphones, please return them by midnight." I thought this was reasonable, but Nina exploded. She slammed the fridge door so hard the magnets rattled and accused me of treating her like a child. That afternoon, she locked herself in my bathroom for 2 hours, sobbing about how isolated she felt after losing her independence and how I was punishing her for her trauma. The final straw December arrived, and with it a calamity I couldn't ignore. One morning I woke to an unholy stench. Milo had urinated on my favorite throw rug and shredded a pillow cover in protest. When I confronted Nina, she shrugged, saying, "Cats will be cats." I pointed out that I'd covered the vet bill, cleaned Milo's carrier, and even bought a new litter box when he outgrew the old one. She looked at me blankly. "I thought you liked an eco-friendly vibe. Wood pellets are cheaper and more sustainable." Those pellets were sold out everywhere, and cleaning them up had taken me an hour. And February's rent and utilities had come due the same morning. The stress was palpable. I snapped, "This ends today." The ultimatum and eviction. That evening I sat down with Nina and Cal and said, "I love you and I know you're struggling, but my own life is unraveling. This was supposed to be temporary and it's gone on 5 months too long." I apologized, voice trembling, then handed her a typed note. Move-out deadline January 31st. Expenses owed. $250 for utilities, vet bills, groceries, and cat supplies. Payable in 2 installments by move-out. House rules until then. No. Borrowing of personal items. Shared chores must be completed as scheduled. Small gatherings limited to 2 people. Nina's face crumpled. She shouted that I was throwing her to the wolves, that she had nowhere else to go, and that I was abandoning her when she needed me most. She accused me of being cold and transactional. Cal interjected quietly, "We can't lose ourselves trying to save someone else." Nina's hurt turned to fury. She slammed out of the condo, Milo darting after her, and texted me all. night about how I'd broken her trust and would regret this. Some of her messages ended with sobbing while laughing emojis, mocking, painful, aftermath and reflection. On January 31st, Nina left in the early morning light, dragging Milo's carrier behind her. She left a single check for $300, far short of the amount owed, pinned to the fridge. I spent the next weekend deep cleaning the condo, scrubbing the rug, replacing damaged pillows, and hiring a carpet steamer to remove the wood pellet stains. Cal and I repaired our own bond over home-cooked meals and quiet movie nights, and we've begun looking seriously at apartments with 2 spare bedrooms, ideally for guests who pay rent. Yet I'm haunted by guilt. I replay every moment. Was I too harsh? Should I have set boundaries earlier? Could I have found a way to support Nina without losing my stability? She truly had nowhere else to go, and I sincerely believe she needed help. But I also had my own life, career deadlines, relationship commitments, and mental health to consider. So here I am, still clearing the dust of her departure, still resolving my own finances, still debating whether compassion demanded sacrifice without limit, or whether compassion also means protecting yourself. So, Reddit, AITA, for evicting. My friend and her cat, after 5 months of temporary refuge, demanding repayment for the expenses I covered, and reasserting boundaries that I couldn't live without. I, 35F, have always believed that helping family in crisis is non-negotiable. So when my twin sister Hannah, 35F, landed on my doorstep last July, suitcase in hand and mascara streaked down her cheeks, claiming her husband had kicked her out, her bank account was frozen, and her only child Lily, 3, had nowhere else to go, I welcomed her into my home without hesitation. I live in a roomy 3-bed townhouse in a quiet suburb with my partner Matteo, 37M, and our golden retriever, Scout. And until Hannah arrived, the spare room was set up as a craft studio and home office. I cleared it out, bought a new twin bed, built a little play corner for Lily, lent Hannah my car to go on job interviews, even agreed to front her rent share once she landed full-time work, because family first has always been my motto. In the early weeks she was spotless. Lily napped predictably, Hannah cooked dinners for all of us, laundered Scout's blankets when he got muddy, and applied for every marketing role she found, promising a start date by September. But September passed, and Hannah's 6-week plan extended into month after month as her divorce dragged through court and she tussled with her ex over custody and alimony. By October, our quiet evenings on the deck were interrupted by Lily's tantrums at bedtime, which Hannah couldn't calm without recoiling into silent tears, leaving me to step in to avoid Scout's barking. By November, the car keys habitually disappeared. Hannah needed them to drive Lily to preschool drop-off and therapy appointments, but often returned them with a near-empty tank and a trail of snack wrappers in the back seat. I covered gas and groceries, dog food, toddler snacks, and our weekly organic produce box, expecting reimbursement once her paycheck cleared, but when the rent share was due in December, she produced a wad of IOUs and cold apologies. My lawyer froze. My account. I'm waiting on the trust fund, just a bit longer, I swear. In January, our electric bill spiked by 40% because she'd turned the heat up to 80 degrees to keep Lily from shivering. And when I suggested we set a schedule for thermostat use, she accused me of micromanaging her parenting. Scout, normally mellow, began chewing couch cushions when Lily ran around unsupervised, leaving the living room carpet shredded. Hannah chalked it up to puppy jealousy and left the mess for me to clean. Meanwhile, my own freelance graphic novel. Projects were sliding off the rails. I missed deadlines, clients complained, and my bank balance sank perilously low as I poured hundreds into tow-away fees when Hannah's car blocked the driveway for days, and into vet bills when Scout swallowed a piece of Lily's plastic toy. Matteo, who'd at first been supportive, building Lily a makeshift castle in the play corner and teaching her to ride his old bicycle, gradually grew resentful as he came home to my frayed nerves, late-night sobbing over another past-due invoice, and our savings depleted by Hannah's mounting emergencies, which had included a sudden $500 cleaning fee when Lily left a crayon masterpiece on my white drywall. By February, I'd lost 2 major commissions and our long-planned trip to visit my parents had evaporated. One morning, I discovered Hannah hosting a game night for her new circle of support group pals. 6 strangers in our tiny kitchen, spilling wine on our butcher block counters, using every spot in the fridge for their perishables, and leaving the plastic cups on my dining room floor. I asked her why she hadn't told me, and she said, "You need to see me thriving," and I thought it would be fine for one night. The next day I sat down with Hannah over lukewarm coffee, heart pounding. "This was supposed to be temporary. It's been 7 months. I love you, but my life is collapsing under the weight of your crisis." She burst into tears, called me a hypocrite for not making sacrifices, and reminded me I'd abandoned her when I refused to lend her another $2,000 for a last-ditch marketing course. My resolve crumpled for a moment, until I remembered the eviction notice from our landlord warning that our lease would be terminated if our utility account went into arrears again. That night, with Mateo's quiet support, I printed a stark note and taped it to the fridge. "Please clear your things and vacate by March 15th. I can no longer host you." I tucked away 7 months of receipts, groceries, vet bills, tow-away notices, into a folder labeled "What You Owe." The next morning, Hannah found the note, crumpled it, and drove off in my car without saying goodbye, leaving Lily's oversized teddy bear and rent checks made out to the wrong apartment. Weeks later, we received a terse email from her lawyer demanding joint custody of Lily and accusing me of alienation, but I held firm. I'd covered my share of her crisis, but I could no longer sacrifice my own stability. Now, with the spare room back as my craft studio, Scout curled up on the reclaimed couch, and Mateo and I rebuilding our savings, I still lie awake some nights, wondering if I should have endured one more month, one more midnight sob session, one more stained carpet. After all, she was family. So Reddit AITA for evicting my twin sister and her daughter after 7 months of temporary refuge that nearly destroyed my home, my finances, and my mental health. I, 30F, met Jordan, 29M, during the pandemic, when we were both furloughed from our city jobs and bonded over late-night video game sessions. By the time we could return to offices, we'd become inseparable, and he'd crashed on my couch, so often that when his lease ended and his savings evaporated on emergency dental work last June, I didn't hesitate to offer him my spare bedroom. "Just until I land my next contract," he promised, and I cleared out all my crafting supplies to make room. He moved in with 2 suitcases, his battered guitar, and the bright-eyed optimism of someone convinced things would turn around quickly. For the first 2 months, he kept that promise, waking before dawn to search job boards, running on his budgeted caffeine-free days, and pitching in with chores, dusting my bookshelves, vacuuming the dog hair from my rugs, even organizing my overflowing spice rack. When he finally landed a low-starter role at a small design firm in August, I rejoiced. He was on his way out, ready to get his own place within a month. September, however, brought an unexpected layoff at Jordan's new firm, courtesy of a venture capital. Crunch. He treated it philosophically. "Just another detour," he said, but his daily routine unraveled. He began sleeping till noon, leaving dirty dishes in every room, and borrowing my laptop for quick 1-hour freelance edits that turned into all-night sessions that chewed up my Wi-Fi bandwidth and drained my electricity. The just until stretched into October, and I found my grocery budget disappearing on his impulse snack runs. 2 bags of gourmet coffee beans here, a case of flavored energy drinks there. When I gently reminded him that I was covering utilities and groceries on top of rent, he apologized, credited his bank account in theory, then vanished for days on networking trips that never yielded an offer. By November, I'd covered 2 months of his $600 rent share and countless utility bills. My own work suffered. Clients complained of slow turnarounds, while I tiptoed around his midday remote job interviews in my cramped home office. His neglected plant collection died from lack of care. A half-empty bottle of champagne sat corked on my dining table from his job celebration that never happened. He fell so far behind on groceries that when I went to the store, I'd find his half-empty cart next to mine, ice cream tubs, frozen pizza, novelty sodas, none of which I'd asked for. He insisted I help him list his old stereo on resale sites to come up with cash, then vanished for 48 hours while I fielded potential buyers. My partner, Elena, 32F, who'd moved in 6 months before Jordan arrived, began sleeping on the couch because Jordan's late-night guitar riffs and horrendous home studio recording kept her awake. Our dinner conversations devolved into complaints. "I never see you anymore," she'd say. "You're either working or mediating Jordan's crises." We'd planned our first joint vacation in years, but the moment Elena tried to book flights, Jordan begged to borrow our credit card, claiming he needed to secure a last-minute freelance gig overseas, even though he'd never once sent me an invoice for his previous work. I refused, and he stormed out of the living room in a huff. In December, I reached my breaking point. I returned home one evening to find Jordan hosting 5 of his new creative collective friends in my living room, complete with beer kegs, a makeshift photo booth under my holiday lights, and a ping-pong table blocking the hallway, my tie. Poor cat Whiskers was hiding under the kitchen sink, and empty pizza boxes and half-finished 24-pack cans cluttered every surface. When I asked why they hadn't been invited, Jordan shrugged. They needed a safe space to brainstorm. I pointed out that safe spaces don't come with my name on the lease. He laughed, handed me a craft beer token, and said I was overreacting. That night, Elena and I had our first real fight. She accused me of enabling Jordan's freeloading. I accused her of lacking compassion. We went to bed angry, our first such night in our 3-year relationship. The next morning, I drafted an email titled "Roommate Arrangement Update" and hit send without rereading. "Jordan, I've tried to help you through job losses, debts, and creative burnout, but your stay has gone far beyond just until. You owe me for July-November rent shares $3,000, utilities $450, and groceries $600, totaling $4,050. You must repay in installments of $1,350 on January 15th, February 1st, and February 15th, and vacate the spare bedroom by February 28th. Any further overages will be considered additional debt. I wish you well, but I need my home and my life back." The email lit up his phone. I watched anxiously as he read, reread, and finally texted, "You're literally kicking me out on the street in the dead of winter." I answered, "I already gave you 5 months." He called me ungrateful, a social pariah, and threatened to post on social media that I was an awful friend. For 2 days, he ignored Elena's texts and mine. He stayed holed up in the spare bedroom playing old RPGs and ordering takeaway. He didn't touch the shared chore chart and let the washing machine overflow onto the floor. On January 30th, with my heart pounding, I changed the locks. I stayed at a friend's for the night to let the dust settle. When I returned, Jordan's suitcases lay at the foot of the bed, his gear gone, a check for $1,000 half tucked under the pillow. He hadn't paid the full amount, but I saw the sincerity in that partial payment and the stubborn pride that kept him from asking for more time. I called and said, "Take a bus home. We'll sort out the remainder later." Now my apartment is calm again. Whiskers lounges in the spare room's remodeled craft nook. Eleanor and I are rebuilding our weekend brunch rituals, and my bank account is crawling back into positive territory. I've heard through mutual friends that Jordan's staying with his sister and re-evaluating his life choices, and we haven't spoken directly in weeks. Sometimes I replay every moment. Was I too harsh? Should I have insisted on boundaries sooner? Could I have offered a shorter timeline or partial rent instead of free housing? But I also know that my own career, my relationship, and my peace of mind were slipping away. So here I am, torn between relief and guilt. Relief that my home is mine again. Guilt that I may have abandoned the friend who once saved me from loneliness. Am I the a-hole for evicting my college roommate and dear friend after months of temporary refuge, demanding repayment for rent and utilities, and demanding my life back? I, 31F, have always been the one to drop everything for friends in crisis. My best friend, Will, 32M, called me last October in full meltdown. His partner of 6 years had left him. He'd been evicted from their shared apartment for missed rent when his barista side gig dried up, and his savings were gone. When he showed up on my doorstep with 2 duffels and his aging Labrador Mabel, I yanked out the guest room sheets, cleared space in my 1-bedroom flat, and told him, "Stay as long as you need. Rent, utilities, dog kibble, all on me. I was proud when he landed a graphic design contract 2 weeks later. He promised he'd be out by Thanksgiving. Instead, contract renewals fizzled. His barista gig never returned, and just until I get back on my feet, stretched into month after month. I covered every extra expense, splitting my grocery runs 3 ways instead of 2, fronting his share of electricity when Mabel's heat lamp drove up our bill, refinancing my own phone when his line was disconnected and he needed it for urgent client calls. By December, my work-from-home rhythm had shattered. Will commandeered my desk for his quiet design space, relegating me to the living room couch, which he covered in Mabel's muddy blankets. My clients began complaining about tardy drafts. I pleaded housemate troubles in emails, but that didn't stop projects from drying up. Will's gratitude turned brittle. He flipped the thermostat to 75-degree nerve so Mabel wouldn't shiver, then lectured me when I begged we bring it back down. He borrowed my car to take Mabel to doggy. Daycare I didn't know cost $50 a day, and texted me to Venmo the driver. I found myself apologizing for every late invoice while canceling my own therapy sessions to drive him to urgent pitch meetings that never materialized. In January, my partner, Elena, 33F, started sleeping at her sister's. She'd come home to find Will and Mabel sprawled across our queen bed, Twitch alarm barking at every subway rumble. I missed her warm body beside me. She missed my undivided attention. Our dinner dates vanished, replaced by heated boundaries talks. She begged me to reclaim our life. I defended my loyalty. My savings evaporated as I covered $200 and I rent shares, $600 in utilities overages, $400 in groceries, and a surprise $300 vet bill when Mabel swallowed a sock. I begged Will to contribute even $200 a month. He wept, swore I'll never forgive, and promised next paycheck. Then, one night in late February, I returned from an all-day photo shoot to find my apartment hosting a midnight support group. Meeting Will had organized on my dime. 8 strangers drinking beer from my best glasses, sitting on my floor, praising him for his courage in rebuilding his life. Mabel had upended my potted plants, leaving dirt tracks all over. My rug. I looked at the room, wine rings on my coffee table, broken stems on my fiddle leaf fig, phone chargers and power tools strewn about, and realized I'd become the enabling landlord to my friend's endless crisis. That morning, I drafted an email titled, "Time to Find Your Own Path," laying out, move out by March 31st. Repayment of $2,500 in living expenses in 3 equal installments. No more guests, no more emergencies without contribution. Will's reply was a single line, "You're the worst friend I've ever had." He packed Mabel into my car, dropped off a single $200 check under my pillow, and left without a hug. My apartment is finally calm. My desk is mine again, my thermostat sits at 68 degrees, and my bank account is creeping back up. But I feel hollow. Eleanor's back by my side. Clients are returning, and Mabel no longer wakes me at dawn. Yet every time I water my fig, I wonder, did I fail the never let a friend struggle alone test, or was I finally brave enough to protect my own life? Am I the a-hole for evicting my long-struggling friend and demanding he pay his way after I'd already sacrificed everything for him? Background E32F, come from a fairly close-knit family. My parents, now retired, live a couple of hours away from me in a small lakeside town. I'm married to my husband, D, 35M, and we have 2 young kids, ages 4 and 2. My younger sister, J, 29F, recently started dating someone new, S, 31M, whom she met through a mutual friend. Ever since I was a kid, my sister and I had a bit of a competitive streak. We're not maliciously competitive, more like 2 horses jockeying for position in a race. Growing up, I was always the golden child, straight A's, student council president, prom queen. Meanwhile, Jay struggled a bit more academically, but excelled socially. Our parents, bless them, always tried to celebrate both of us equally, but sometimes our different strengths made that tricky. My husband and I moved to a different city about 6 years ago, which meant we often missed family events. We'd come back for Christmas, birthdays, and major holidays, but otherwise relied on FaceTime and Zoom. Jay stayed closer to home to help care for our aging grandparents, and I was proud of her for that. We both carved out fulfilling lives, just in different locations. The upcoming family reunion last month. My parents announced they wanted to host a 2-day family reunion at their lakeside house over Memorial Day weekend. They invited aunts, uncles, cousins, the whole clan. It was their grand finale of renovations, a new deck, an outdoor kitchen, and even a fire pit by the water. They were really excited to show it off. They specifically asked that each close family unit bring a signature dish or activity. My family, me, Dee, the kids, they requested we bring a dessert and some yard games suitable for children. Jay's family, just J and S, they suggested she bring an appetizer platter and maybe some board games for the adults. My parents were really clear. They wanted us all to contribute something so no one felt like they were just showing up to eat. My plans and preparations. Once we RSVP'd, I started planning. I decided to bake a 3-tiered strawberry and chocolate layer cake, one of my signature creations. I spent days testing different frostings to make sure it would hold up in the summer heat and still taste amazing. I also ordered 2 giant cornhole sets and a set of toddler-friendly ring toss games online, so my kids and their cousins would have something to do. I told Jay all of this over a call a few weeks before the event, joking that we'd have a cake that could feed an army, and games to keep everyone busy so we don't bore Mom and Dad with toddler tantrums. She seemed excited and said, "Oh wow, that sounds incredible. I'm probably just going to bring some chips though. I don't really have time to make fancy stuff like you." I shrugged it off. Jay is a spontaneous cook, and maybe she wanted to keep it simple. Jay's surprise announcement. Fast forward to a week before the reunion. Jay messages me in our family WhatsApp group and drops a PDF of an incredible 5-course tasting menu she had prepped for the entire reunion. She'd apparently spent the last month designing an appetizer tower with homemade crostini, 5 different gourmet dips, a charcuterie board with house-cured meats, and even mini hand-rolled sushi bites. She'd also organized a professional bartender to serve a signature cocktail bar, complete with personalized drink stirrers engraved with family member names. My jaw dropped. I immediately texted her privately. Me, "Jay, are you serious? This is beyond fancy for a casual family reunion." Jay, "I know, right? I wanted to surprise Mom and Dad for all the sacrifices they've made. Plus, S's aunt owns a catering company and she's lending us the servers and equipment. I thought the drinks would be fun too." I panicked inside. All I had was a cake and some yard games. I didn't have time or budget for hired help or a full tasting menu. I considered scrapping my cake plans, but it was already in progress. The games were ordered and en route. The clash on the morning of the reunion. We arrived at my parents' beautifully redone lakeside home. Everything looked stunning. New deck, flower boxes, the fire pit crackling, tables draped in linen. Jay's appetizer tower and bar station took up half the patio. She had 3 servers setting up decorative platters. Meanwhile, my cornhole boards were awkwardly propped against the side porch, and my cake was sweating in a cooler. My dad came over and said, "Sweetheart, this cake is gorgeous. Did you make it yourself?" I smiled weakly. "Yes, Dad, I did." He beamed. But then Jay's fiancé S came over. He gently put a hand on my shoulder. "Hey, your cake looks amazing. But Mom thought maybe you could let us handle desserts. We have a pastry chef coming by later to deliver individual lemon tarts and chocolate mousse cups. We don't want you to carry that monster cake up the stairs." I stiffened. "Oh, okay, that's generous of you guys, but I did spend a ton of time on it. I think people will want to try it." He gave me an apologetic look and walked away. Meanwhile, my mom was already tucking away my cake into a corner of the kitchen. When I protested, she said, "It's too big, sweetheart. Our dessert table is already bursting. We'll serve it tomorrow at brunch instead." My reactions, I felt so overshadowed. It wasn't just about the cake. It was the principle of my effort being sidelined without even asking me. Jay's spread was impressive, but it wasn't a competition. At least, that's how I saw it. Over the next few hours, I found myself sulking, barely interacting. My husband, Dee pulled me aside and asked what was wrong. I burst into tears and vented about how Jay always one-ups me and makes me feel like my contributions don't matter. Later that evening, after everyone ate and drank, my dad thanked Jay profusely for turning our reunion into a catered gala. My mum didn't mention the cake in front of the whole family. My cousins were raving about the sushi bites and cocktails, and I felt like I might as well have stayed home. I cornered Jay privately and said, "You really didn't have to go that big. I love you, but it hurts that my stuff got shunted aside." She looked genuinely surprised. "I'm so sorry, I thought you'd be happy." "I can't believe you're upset. I was trying to make it extra special," I snapped. "Well, you succeeded at my expense." The fallout after. I said that. Jay looked hurt. She told me I was acting like a jealous toddler and stormed off. For the rest of the weekend, we barely spoke. At brunch the next morning, where my cake did make its appearance, completely cold and already cut into squares, Jay sat at the other end of the table. My husband tried to smooth things over, but Jay wouldn't engage. When we finally had to leave that afternoon, the sibling tension was so thick you could cut it with a knife. My parents called later to ask why we left early. I tried to explain, but the words came out bitter. Now Jay won't answer my texts. My husband says I blew this way out of proportion. My parents haven't said anything direct, but I can feel their disappointment. I'm wondering if maybe I was being petty and oversensitive. Author's note: hey everyone, this one got away from me in terms of length, so buckle up. I'd really appreciate any thoughts on whether I'm in the wrong here, because I feel like I'm going crazier by the minute. Background: I'm K. 28F, and I've been living in my city's downtown core for about 5 years now. I work in publishing as an editor, which keeps me pretty busy. I have 2 best friends from college, A, 28F, and M, 27F, and we've remained inseparable since freshman year. Between the 3 of us, we've weathered everything from bad breakups and flat tire drama to job losses and family emergencies. We usually take a weekend trip together at least once a year, rotate hosting dinner parties, and we all know each other's families pretty well. Last summer, I started dating Jay, 30mem, who I met at a book launch. Things moved fast. By autumn, we were saying I love you and meeting each other's parents. Around that same time, A got engaged to S, 29mem, after a whirlwind 6-month romance. Everyone was thrilled. A and S's families met. There were engagement parties, the works, the upcoming weekend gathering. For my 28th birthday, I'd been planning a surprise garden brunch at my apartment complex's rooftop terrace. I booked a local catering company for quiches and fruit tarts, ordered balloon garlands, and even secretly enlisted my neighbor, a pastry chef, to bake a custom bookworm cake lined with edible pages. I sent A and M a private group chat invite and gave them all the details. Arrive by 10 a.m. on Sunday, park their cars around back, and keep it hush-hush till I showed up. A, being my co-conspirator, said she'd handle decor and a playlist. M said she'd pick up floral arrangements and party favors. I was in charge of the food, cake, and coordinating Jay's arrival under the guise of just going for brunch. I was thrilled. This would be the best surprise yet. As engagement party, again flash forward to 2 weeks before my birthday. A texts the 2 of us. A: hey girls, S's mom offered to host our engagement party that weekend at her country club. She wants to do champagne tower, professional photographer, DJ, the whole shebang on Saturday night. She's covering all costs. Hope that's cool? I paused. My birthday brunch was Sunday morning, but A's engagement party was Saturday night, just a 24-hour turnaround. I thought it was odd that she'd double book family events on the same weekend, but I didn't say anything, assuming she'd tell me more details later. That week, A bombarded me with messages asking if I could help coordinate her seating chart, if I knew anyone who could DJ Sunday's after-party, whether I'd help her try on dresses at a trunk show. Meanwhile, Em and I tried to remind A about the brunch plan, but every time we brought it up, she responded, "Don't worry, Kay, you know I'd never bail on your birthday." I shrugged and let it go. A has always been a bit scatterbrained when it comes to calendars. The weekend arrives, Saturday afternoon, I spent the day on last-minute cake touches and double-checked with the caterers. Jay helped me set up some of the tableware in my living room. Around 4 p.m., I got dressed for A's engagement party. Her had sent me a photo of a blush pink floor-length gown she wanted me to match S in coordinating charcoal grey. I arrived at S's mother's country club at 6 p.m. The venue was stunning, twinkling fairy lights, a live string quartet on the lawn, an ice sculpture. I congratulated A and S, met their extended families and enjoyed cocktail hour. S's mom waved me over to sign the guest book and said, "Your birthday brunch tomorrow? Don't worry about the glassware, we're happy to loan you ours." I thanked her, thinking that was a generous gesture. Saturday night. After dinner, the photographer spotted me on the dance floor and asked if I was part of A's family. I laughed and introduced myself as the best friend for 12 years. But she raised an eyebrow and said, "We didn't send you an invite to tonight's party." I was puzzled. A was the one who'd texted me the details. I brushed it off and rejoined the dancing. Late night. As the party wound down, A pulled me aside. "A, K, I just realized I forgot to send you the formal invite via paper mail. Sorry, but definitely come back tomorrow." She hugged me and ran off. I felt a weird pang, like I was a last-minute add-on rather than the maid of honor I was supposed to be. Sunday morning. The brunchy woke up early Sunday, buzzing with excitement. Jay and I loaded quiche trays, cake and balloon garlands into my car and headed downtown. At 9:45 a.m., we arrived at the rooftop terrace. M was already there, stringing up balloons. She whispered, "You're looking beautiful," ready to shock her. I went downstairs to meet A before she saw anything. I planned to bring her up by telling her, "Your ride is here," like a limo driver. I tapped her on the shoulder and then she jumped. A, confused, "Kay, what are you doing here?" Me, grinning, "Come on up to celebrate with you. Happy birthday." A's face fell and she froze. She pointed behind me. The roof was decked out in balloons, a banner reading, "Happy Birthday, Kay." The caterers were setting tables, and Jay was positioning the cake. I gasped. "Surprise!" A's jaw dropped. There was a beat of silence. Then she said, "Wait, this is your party?" I nodded. She looked at the banner, and then at me. A. I thought today was my engagement after-party. My mom told me the after-party was at Midnight Eats on Main, and I had to RSVP by Friday. You didn't get that? I blinked. A's after-party was scheduled for Sunday evening at a downtown bar, 2 hours after my brunch ended. Neither Jay nor I had heard a peep about that. A. You guys seriously didn't know? M slumped and whispered. She didn't tell us. A's face shifted from confusion to anger. So you planned a whole party with my mom's glassware, the bar, my photographer. For you? On my engagement weekend? I tried to explain. Mine was a birthday party, but A cut me off. She yanked down the banner so hard the letters tore, then stormed off. M texted me, "I'm going upstairs to cry, be right back." I stood there frozen as caterers quietly packed away the setup. Jay placed her hand on my shoulder. What just happened? The fallout by noon, the brunch was essentially cancelled. A refused to come see it. M retreated to her car. Jay and I ate quiche on the curb outside my building. I felt embarrassed, hurt, and utterly confused. I texted A later, me. "I'm so sorry about the mix-up. I had no idea about your after-party. I only knew about Saturday's engagement party and the brunch I planned for my birthday." A replied hours later. A, don't apologize. You literally tried to steal my weekend. Just congratulations on turning 28. We haven't spoken since. Jay thinks A is overreacting. M thinks I should have coordinated calendars more closely. My mom called to ask why I looked so upset, and I just cried. Now I'm left wondering, question for the community AITA for planning my birthday brunch on the same weekend as A's engagement celebrations, even though I didn't know about her Sunday after party. Should I have double-checked A's schedule before sending out invitations, given that it was her engagement weekend? Is it reasonable for A to be upset that my party stole her spotlight, or is she placing too much emphasis on events, being back-to-back? How can I approach apologizing, if I should, without sounding like I'm shifting blame onto her communication. Thanks so much for reading. I'm all ears and appreciate any honest feedback. K, 28F. Author's note. Hey everyone, this one got really long, sorry in advance. I'm wrestling with whether I'm totally out of line, so I'd love your candid thoughts. Background: I'm L, 34F, a project manager at a mid-sized tech firm. I work hybrid, 3 days in the office, 2 days remote. My fiancée, T, 36M, is an elementary school teacher. We've been engaged for 8 months and have set our wedding date for fall of next year. My mother, Mom, 61F, lives nearby and is helping with planning, while T's family is scattered across 3 states. My younger brother, R, 29Me, moved back home last year after a rough breakup. He's been living in the guest room ever since, job hunting. He's a funny, creative guy but prone to flakiness. Despite his ups and downs, I love him and have been trying to support him however I can. The surprise housewarming back in April. T and I closed on our new home, a modest 3-bedroom with a big yard in a quiet suburb. Since then, we've been renovating, painting, new floors, landscaping, and we finally finished this month. To celebrate, I decided to throw an informal housewarming party for family and close friends on Saturday, May 24th, this coming weekend. Organized invitations, e-invites sent to 25 people, asking guests to drop by any time between 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. Food and drink. I'd order BBQ platters, sides, and a custom Home Sweet Home sheet cake from our favorite bakery. I'd also stock a self-serve mimosa bar and non-alcoholic spritzers. Activities: lawn games, giant Jenga cornhole, led by R, my brother, as entertainment director. Decor: simple balloons, a welcome home L&T banner, and some potted herbs as favors. I told R weeks in advance, you'll host the games and keep people moving. It'll be fun, and you'll get some side cash from tips I'll give you. He agreed and even started practicing his game show host voice. R's surprise. Baby shower last month. R quietly started dating S, 28F, who he met at a bar. R never said much about her, but I'm glad he's happy. Then, 2 weeks ago, Mom let slip. S is pregnant. I was thrilled. Becoming an aunt would be amazing. But then Mom added, R's planning a big baby shower for S this Saturday at Mom and Dad's place, starting around 3 p.m. You should swing by after your housewarming. I blinked. The dates overlapped. My party was 2:06 p.m. that same Saturday. R had known about our housewarming since I sent invites in mid-April, and I had known about his shower since last month via Mom. Yet neither of us mentioned the conflict. I texted R. Me. Hey, I just heard about the baby shower Saturday at my. Mum's from Mum. Did she send you an invite or is it a surprise? R. It's a surprise shower for S. We're doing games and cake at 3. Don't tell her I told you. I didn't know what to say. I was disappointed, but I also didn't want to rain on what was supposed to be a happy milestone. I replied, wow, cool. I have a housewarming that day too, 2 to 6. Maybe I'll stop by. R didn't respond. Day of 2 p.m. Housewarming begins. My friends and neighbors trickled in around 2 p.m. The sun was shining. The yard looked great. R arrived at 2:15 p.m. in his entertainment director polo shirt, carrying the giant Jenga set. I told him, perfect timing. He smiled and said, let me set this up. He then disappeared into the house. A few minutes later, my friend C pointed out that R had left a stack of invitations on the entry table for his baby shower at our parents' house that afternoon. Apparently, he printed 20 invites, heavy, cardstock, and forgot to take them with him. I pulled him aside. These are for your shower, right? He turned bright red. I packed the invites in your housewarming bag by mistake. Totally my fault. He stammered an apology and scurried off to join a game of cornhole. PM, moment of truth at 3 p.m. Mum and Dad showed up. Mom in a spring dress, Dad with a vase of flowers. I greeted them, then noticed Mum's eyes flick to the Jenga blocks and cake table. She beamed, "Elle, the place looks amazing." Dad nodded and added, "We'll just stay an hour before heading home to get ready for the shower." Mom even asked if they could borrow my cake knife for the shower cake. I felt a pang but plastered on a smile. Of course, feel free. There's an extra in the kitchen. 3:30 p.m. Guests. Divide by 3:30, the yard games were in full swing. R was doing a great job hyping up players. But then my cousin E whispered, "I'm heading next door in a bit. R's shower starts soon, right?" I nodded, feeling gut-punched. Friends started trickling away. 2 neighbors, an old college roommate, even C said, "Don't take this personally, but I promised I'd help wrap S's gifts at your folks' place." Within half an hour, only a handful of guests remained. My fiancé pulled me aside. "Are you seeing this? They're abandoning you." I forced a laugh. "It's fine, everyone wants to see R and S." But inside I was simmering. PM, clash around 4. I stood by the cake table, cake knife in hand, when R's fiancée S arrived solo. She gave me an awkward hug and said, "Thank you for hosting this, L, but R said I should head back to Mom's for the shower. He'll follow in a bit." I forced a smile. "Sure, congrats, S." She left before I could say more. R himself showed up at 4:15 p.m., looking sheepish. He put a hand on my shoulder. "Sis, I'm so sorry. Things got hectic. Last night, when we forgot half the decorations and invites, S was freaking out, so I had to rush home." I let it out. "You knew about my party for over a month. You never told me about yours until today. Now half my guests are gone, including Mom and Dad." He looked hurt. "I didn't think it was a big deal. I thought everyone could shuttle back and forth." I snapped. "It is a big deal to me. This was my celebration of buying a house, something I've worked my butt off for, and now it feels secondary." He glared. "Fine, I'll leave then." He grabbed his polo and dashed off. The fallout tried to salvage things by corralling the remaining friends for cake. Only 5 people stayed. Guests were polite but awkward. I cut the cake in half, one half for the housewarming group, the other half I boxed up to take to the shower myself later. Everyone complimented the cake, but I felt hollow. At 5 p.m. we cleaned up. T and I packed the leftovers. I told him I'd still deliver the cake to my parents for the shower. He agreed, but warned me I'd probably make the tension worse. I drove over at 5:30. Mom answered the door, all bright smiles, but her eyes flicked past the cake box to an empty driveway. "Where's R?" she asked. I explained he'd been overwhelmed. Mom hugged me and whispered, "I'm proud of you, sweetie. You didn't deserve this." But then she added, "We'll wait until Sunday for the shower if you like. Guests can come then." I didn't say anything. My phone blew up that night. Group texts from family asking why I'd cancelled early, a curt, "Thanks for the cake," from R, and a text from Mom, "I love you, but please don't make this about you." I haven't talked to R since. Question for the community AITA for being upset that R's baby shower overshadowed my housewarming, even though family obligations pulled guests away. Should I have postponed my party when I learned of the scheduling? Conflict. Was I unreasonable to confront R so bluntly in front of guests? How do I repair things with R and Mom without apologizing for feeling hurt? I'm torn between feeling justified and worrying I overreacted. Appreciate your honest judgments. El Taransi Forza. Author's note. Hey everyone, grab a drink because this one's a saga. I'm really torn about how I reacted, and I'd be grateful for any perspectives. Thanks for reading all the way through. Background: I'm N31F, and I work as a graphic designer at a boutique agency. My partner, C33, is an engineer who travels a bit for work. We've been together 6 years and own a small loft in the city. We have 2 cats, Luna and Sol, who basically run the place. My best friend E30F and I have known each other since college. We bonded over midnight ramen runs and indie film marathons, and she's been my chosen sister. She's dating T32M, and they just moved in together 6 months ago. E and I share practically everything: clothes, concert tickets, relationship dramas. C and T know each other casually and get along fine, though our social circles don't overlap much beyond that. The art show invite. About 2 months ago, I got an invitation to submit work to a new underground art collective's inaugural group show. It's a big deal. Local artists I admire are in it, and there's a gallery opening reception with local press. All submissions were due early May, and selections would be announced mid-May, with a June 1st opening. I poured every spare minute into a mixed media installation piece, Reflections of Home, that incorporates reclaimed wood, digital projection, and live plantings. I felt proud of it. My first large-scale interactive work. When the call for art first went out, I messaged me. Hey, I'm planning to submit something huge for this collective show. Would you want to help me hang it at the opening? Diagam, of course, you know I've got your back. Let me know the date and I'll be there. I assumed would clear her calendar if she could, since she's always supported my work. E's cousin's wedding last week, announced via a group chat. Guys, I just got the formal invite for my cousin's wedding, Saturday, June 1st, at 6 p.m. plus a rehearsal dinner Friday night. It's a big family affair and they'd love me there. I feel so honored. My heart sank. The wedding reception starts at 6 p.m. on the same night as the gallery opening. The collective specifically asked artists to arrive by 5 p.m. for a quick walkthrough, press photos at 5:30. Then the reception begins at 6. It was the only night the gallery could secure a bartender and a gallery projection technician. I knew. Felt guilty immediately. Later that day, I'm so torn. I want to be there to celebrate with you, but it's my cousin. They don't know about the art show. I tried to be understanding. Family weddings are important. If you can't make it, I get it. But if you can swing it, I'd love your help setting up. Said she'd check her family's travel plans and let me know. The tipping point by Tuesday. I still hadn't heard from her and I was starting to panic about setup logistics. I needed at least one reliable friend there to help me lift the reclaimed wood panels and guide guests through the interactive elements. I messaged again. Hey, I need to finalize my crew. If you can't do it, just let me know so I can find someone else. She replied, Sorry, Nam, I just realized the groom's family is hosting a welcome brunch Sunday morning, so it's basically a weekend commitment. I don't think I can break away for your show. I was disappointed but responded politely. Okay, thanks for letting me know. I'll figure something out. What I didn't tell her but felt she knew how much this mattered to me. We've rearranged our schedules for each other countless times. I felt hurt that she couldn't carve out even an hour. Gallery opening June 1st, 4 p.m. Setup. Chaos, my friend J, 29F, agreed at the last minute to help. She's wonderful but not familiar with art installations. C had to work late so he couldn't spare time to help. At the gallery, the space was cavernous, perfect but heavy. Jay and I struggled with panels, almost dropping one. The projectionist arrived at 4:45 p.m., expecting the piece mostly hung. We were running behind. I texted me. Hey, would save me if you could swing by for just 30 min? No reply. At 5 p.m., the press started to trickle in. My heart sank. 30 p.m. Press photos by 5:30. The piece was only half installed. The projection was misaligned. The curator gave me a worried look, while photographers snapped shots of everything except my installation. I stood next to Jay, feeling a wave of panic. PM reception. The opening reception began. Glasses clinked. People admired the other works in the show. My installation was dim, misaligned, and half-set. A few sympathetic friends complimented my concept, but without the interactive planting station or projection alignment, it fell flat. My phone buzzed. Texting me from her cousin's wedding. Having a blast. Here's a pic of us cutting the cake. I'm so sorry you're not here. I'll send you the video of the toasts later. I stared at the screen. Cocktail waiters carried hors d'oeuvres. I texted back. Congrats, Enjoy. I'm here busting my butt. I didn't hear back. I put my phone away, feeling furious and abandoned. The next day, the show runs for 2 weeks, but the opening night felt like everything. The curator later emailed me gently. Curator. I'm so sorry we didn't get your piece fully functional on opening night. The technicians ran out of time, but we'll have it corrected by tomorrow's afternoon. Overall, the concept resonated well. I sighed. At least the full experience would be ready soon. But I still felt wounded. That evening, called me. Hey, are you okay? I saw your texts. I snapped. Oh, I'm great. My biggest dream was half installed, and the one person who promised she'd be there didn't even show up. He was hurt. I'm so sorry, It was my cousin's wedding. I had to be there. I didn't think you'd be so angry. I replied more sharply than I intended. Maybe if you supported me like I support you, I wouldn't be in this mess. She paused, voice quivering. I can't believe you'd say that. I've always been there for you. Then she hung up. The Fallouty haven't heard from E since. J feels bad for me, and C is urging me to apologize to E's fiancée T messaged me, saying E is devastated and thought I understood weddings. My other friends say I might have overreacted. I'm torn. Art opening nights are huge in our community, and I felt utterly alone at the moment I needed help most. But it was E's cousin's wedding, a major family event, and I did ask last minute for help instead of planning earlier when I first learned of the conflict. Question for the community. AITA for being angry at E for not showing up to help with my installation on opening night. Should I have handled the logistics differently once I knew about her wedding? Is it unrealistic to expect my best friend to drop everything for my career milestone? How can I repair our friendship without minimizing her family obligation or my own hurt? I really want to understand if I crossed a line. Thanks in advance for your honest judgments. N31F. I33F have always been the one my friends call the rock. I'm the dependable planner, the problem solver, the person who quietly makes sacrifices so others don't have to, which is why when my younger brother Ben, 30M, called last summer in desperation, I didn't hesitate to step in, even though doing so would upend every aspect of my life. How it started. Ben had been living in a cramped studio in our hometown of Portland, working as an assistant manager at a boutique coffee shop, when rent rose by 20% and his upstairs neighbor flooded his apartment, destroying his few belongings. He was suddenly homeless. His savings gone on emergency hotel stays. He begged me, "Can I crash with you till I find a place? I live in a two-bedroom loft in Seattle. My partner, Jordan, 35M, works night shifts at the hospital. I'm a graphic designer with a flexible schedule, but a tight freelance pipeline. We'd been saving for a house down payment. Every dollar counted. But I couldn't bear the thought of my little brother on the street. So I told Ben he could move in. I cleared out the guest room, bought him fresh sheets, set aside closet space, and even promised to let him borrow my car for job interviews. 3 months max, I said. Just enough to get you back on your feet. Ben arrived 2 days later, lugging a battered suitcase and a battered ego. He hugged me, teared up, and said, "I owe you." That first week, everything went smoothly. He signed up at a new coffee shop, pitched in for groceries, and even deep-cleaned the bathtub without being asked. Jordan was supportive. He said he admired my generosity. I told myself it was temporary, a kindness that wouldn't derail our lives. Not first cracks. By week 4, the cracks appeared. Ben's new shop was a dead end. The manager scheduled him only 12 hours a week. He spent the rest of his time sleeping till noon, then playing video games in the living room. The emergency fund I'd lent him for job hunting, $1,000, vanished. On flights to visit his ex, Maya, he confessed they were trying again, which he claimed would fix his motivation problems. I nagged gently, "Maybe focus on work first?" He waved me off. My own work schedule frayed. Clients rescheduled deadlines because I was too busy house-sitting. Jordan's night shifts meant he slept afternoons, and Ben treated our living room like a dorm. Dirty dishes piled, pizza. Boxes accumulated, and my carefully curated Spotify playlists were drowned out by Ben's blasting gaming streams. When I asked him to clean up, he snapped, "Chill, sis, I'm stressed." I bit my tongue. The financial spiral month 2 hit with a shock. Our joint bank account was nearly depleted. Our rent, utilities, and savings contributions had been planned around splitting costs 3 ways, but Ben hadn't contributed a dime since week 1. When I reminded him of the $300 monthly share, he sighed. My bank card got cancelled, just forgot to update Amazon Pay. He asked me to cover his share of our upcoming storage locker bill, since all my cash is tied up in bills. I paid it, but the guilt was heavy. Meanwhile, Jordan's savings for dental school applications vanished as he covered groceries to keep us all fed. I started skipping Pilates classes to watch Ben's apartment, driving him to interviews, and making coffee runs at 6 a.m. because that's when he said his resume coach could talk. I was exhausted. My own deadline slipped and I ate lunch at my desk to work extra hours. The ultimatum by the end of month 3, every part of my life was in a tailspin. I nearly missed a client pitch because I was stuck helping Ben fix his broken bike chain. Jordan confronted me. "You promised 3 months, we're at 13 weeks, when is this over?" He reminded me of our goals, buying a home, starting our IVF treatments. I felt torn. My heart ached for Ben, but the resentment burned hotter. That night I laid out the terms clearly. Move-out date in 2 weeks. Financial repayment, all the money I'd lent, $1,000 for job hunting, $900 in unpaid rent shares, $200 for storage, total $2,100 due by move-out. Chore schedule, all dishes cleaned daily, common areas tidied and 0 overnight guests. I read it aloud while Ben scrolled his phone. He bristled. "I thought family meant you'd always have my back." I said, "I do, but I can't lose everything for you." He told me I was cold and ungrateful. He slammed his bedroom door. Drama unfolds the next day. Our landlord emailed to warn that the loft smelled like mold. Complaints from the neighbor below, courtesy of the pizza box pile. The HOA fined us $150 for noise violations. I forwarded the notices to Ben. He grumbled but didn't clean. On the move-out date, he hadn't found a place. He'd procrastinated viewings, convinced Maya to let him move in with her temporarily, in Denver. I'd never agreed to cross-state support. He texted, "Can I stay 2 more weeks while I sort flights?" I refused. He yelled at me in the kitchen, "You're kicking me to the curb." I stood my ground. Then he dropped the bomb. "You're ruining my credit. You'll see me in court for co-signing my storage lease." I'd reluctantly co-signed when he was first evicted, thinking I'd only be liable for 2 months. Now he threatened legal action. I went numb. Jordan put his arm around me and said, "Turn your phone off." Separation Ben left that afternoon. No. Packing no goodbye hug. He texted the next day that he'd moved into Maya's basement and resented me for tossing him into debt. Our family split. Parents called me rude and selfish, saying blood ought to be thicker. Cousins texted, "Wow, you really demonstrated who your priorities are." My friends rallied behind me. "You did your part." Jordan apologized that his patient little sister had snapped. I spent the evening on the phone with the storage company, transferring billing off my name and onto Ben's new address. I cancelled the extra gym membership I'd signed him, took back the car keys and scrubbed my loft spotless. Now I'm rebuilding, refilling our savings, catching up on deadlines, planning our IVF cycle. But every time I pass the guest room, I think of Ben's empty suitcase. I worry I destroyed our sibling bond, but I also know I had to protect my future. I've offered to help remotely, reviewing his resume, checking Craigslist listings, sending him bus fare home. He hasn't replied. So Reddit, AITA for evicting my brother after 3 months of generous support, even though doing so nearly destroyed my career, relationship and financial security. I-29F work remotely as a UX designer in a small but steady tech firm. And ever since I moved into my 2-bedroom rental in early 2023, I've dreamed of having a reliable roommate to help cover expenses and keep me company on late-night work. Sessions. Enter Ethan, 32M, a former co-worker who'd just relocated to my city after his startup folded. We'd always clicked over coffee breaks. He's neat, funny, and pays rent on time. So in June 2023, I offered him my spare room at a rate well below market. I told him up front, "I need someone who's in by 10 p.m. on weeknights, respectful of shared space and helpful with utilities." He agreed enthusiastically. The easy start. June-August 2023. For the first 2 months, everything was textbook perfect. Ethan worked as a freelance developer, so he was out during my core work hours. We split groceries, took turns cooking dinners twice a week, and he even let me borrow his bike when mine was in the shop. We'd binge new shows on weekends, traded, design tips, and split our $120 weekly utility bill down the middle. I felt proud I'd found the ideal roommate situation. Then, in September, Ethan confided that his on-again, off-again girlfriend, Sarah, 30F, was in town for a 3-week consulting contract and had nowhere to stay. Sarah's parents live overseas, and her Airbnb booking fell through at the last minute. Ethan asked sheepishly, "Mind if she crashes on the couch?" He promised it would be just a few weeks, and that she'd bring extra groceries and contribute to utilities. I hesitated, but remembered my own financial scramble months earlier and agreed. After all, 3 weeks was nothing. The just 3-week stretch, September-December 2023. Week 1 went smoothly. Sarah was quiet, polite, put away her dishes, and left me thoughtful notes on my whiteboard. Helped myself to the last. Almond milk. Hope that's okay. But by week 2, the couch was starting to look like her permanent station. She set up a little side table with chargers, a lamp, and a stack of design magazines. I told myself, she said 3 weeks, only 1 more week to go. Then week 3 turned into week 4, then month 2. Sarah started bringing her suitcase in and out daily. I realized she'd moved about half her wardrobe in. She replaced my favorite coffee with a pricier brand without asking. She flicked on the heat at 75 degrees every morning before leaving for the office. When I pointed out our September-November utility bill was $350 instead of $240, she scrolled through her phone and said, "Oops, split it 3 ways then." Ethan apologized and paid his share, but Sarah refused, claiming she wasn't staying permanently. Yet the bills and the clutter kept piling up. By December, Sarah had a full side of my closet taken up with winter coats, her yoga mat in the corner, and her shoes lined up by my bedroom door. The just visiting aura vanished. She invited 2 of her work friends over for a holiday potluck without asking me, and they stayed until 3 a.m., music drumming through the walls. I was sleep-deprived during a critical product launch at Work Personal Life on Pause, January-March 2024. My own social life cratered. Hadn't seen my partner, Leo, 31 Mem, in 2 months. Every dinner plan got cancelled because Sarah had to borrow my hair straightener or occupy the kitchen at peak dinner time. My morning runs became stealth missions. If I tried to leave before 7:30 a.m., I'd bump into Sarah in my hallway in her bathrobe. We started small arguments. Her toothpaste splatters in the sink. Her scented candles giving me headaches. Her video calls echoing through the thin walls. I tried gentle discussions. "Hey, can you keep calls to under an hour?" She'd nod, but forget. "Would you mind moving your laundry to weekends?" She'd say yes and then run loads at 2 p.m. on weekdays. I felt unpaid, unvalued, and increasingly resentful. Ultimatum time, April 2024. By mid-April, my anxiety peaked. I'd postponed a client pitch because I couldn't concentrate over Sarah's 3-hour conference calls. Leo broke up with me. He said he'd never felt like a third wheel to someone he'd only met twice. Even my plants were dying from inconsistent watering as I struggled to carve out any me time. On April 20th, I laid down the law. I texted Ethan, "Hey, I've been more than patient with the extra expenses and space invasion, but it's been 7 months. This was a 3-week favor. Sarah needs to find her own place by May 1st, or I'll have to charge her room rate rent of $900 plus utilities. We need a resolution." That night, Ethan confronted me while Sarah was out at an after-work happy hour. He pleaded, "She's stressed at work. She'll move out, I swear." The next morning, I found her keys gone from the hook. She'd taken the Denon headphones I'd lent her and flew to Vegas for a surprise birthday trip without warning. My prized headphones were missing, and my rent checks were late, because Ethan had spent his share on Sarah's utilities and flights. Lockdown and fallout, May-June 2024. On May 1st, Sarah hadn't moved out. I changed the locks and gave Ethan 2 hours to grab his belongings. He came home frantic, banging on the door. "You can't do this." He called me every name in the book: selfish, manipulative, heartless. Sarah posted about the cruel roommate from hell on her Instagram stories. The property manager overheard the commotion and fined both of us $150 for the lock change without permission. Ethan left, swearing he'd sue me for lost possessions and constructive eviction. I discovered he'd packed up my irreplaceable sketchbooks, leaving only his laptop and his girlfriend's yoga blocks. I've since replaced my locks legally and filed a police report for the stolen sketchbooks and headphones, but it dragged on for weeks. Picking up the pieces, now it's July 2024. I'm rebuilding my space. New lock, new headphones, new renter ad ready, but I'm wary of trusting anyone again. My therapist says I did right by setting boundaries, but I still feel guilty for the chaos it caused. My mail got returned, my credit took a hit from the fines, and my friendship with Ethan is irreparably shattered. Leo has tentatively agreed to come back, but only when my place feels like home again. So Reddit AITA for evicting my roommate's long-term guest, his girlfriend, after offering her a short-term stay, changing the locks when she refused to leave, and charging him for the damages. I, 35F, have always identified as fiercely independent. I bought my condo at 28, paid off my car at 30, and even toured solo through Eastern Europe at 32. No handouts, no safety nets. So when my cousin, Mia, 29F, called me last October, voice shaking, tears streaming, saying she'd been laid off, evicted, and her fiancé, Ethan, 31M, was in the ICU after a car accident, I nearly said no. I pride myself on boundaries, but I couldn't bear the thought of her alone and broke, so I did the unthinkable. I told her she could move into my spare bedroom and stay as long as she needed. The rescue phase, October-December 2024. Mia arrived, with 2 suitcases and her dog Piper, whom she insisted must stay with us. I cleared out my guest room, bought fresh linens and spent an afternoon puppy-proofing the apartment. I told her rent was free, utilities were on me, and the spare car I'd kept for road trips was hers for as long as she lived here. She promised to chip in for groceries once I land a job, and Ethan's medical bills were covered by insurance. Just a waiting game. For the first 2 months, it was fine. Mia used my car to search for jobs, filled out applications in the living room, and her relief was palpable. Piper was a quiet pup, crate-trained and well-behaved. Mia cooked dinner twice a week, helped me clean, and returned my car washed and fueled. I felt proud that I could help family in crisis. The creep-in, January-February 2025. Then, in early January, Mia landed a part-time retail gig. She celebrated by treating herself to new boots and inviting friends over for a post-interview party, complete with karaoke in my living room until 2 a.m. I reminded her I needed quiet for my remote client calls. She apologized but said it was just once. Next, Piper began barking incessantly whenever I worked. Mia insisted I train the dog or buy her a better toy to keep her busy, but I wasn't keen on investing in a pet that wasn't mine. My headphones, which I'd lent to Mia for conference calls, returned scratched and missing their left earpiece. When I asked, she said she must have tripped. By mid-February, groceries I'd bought for my week's meal prep were gone by Wednesday, replaced with generic pasta and store-brand sauce. Mia brushed it off. Sorry, brain fog, we'll pay you back. But the IOU never arrived. My electric bill spiked, because Piper's heater ran 24/7, and Mia left the world on in empty rooms. My life unravels. March-April 2025. I started sleeping in the guest room to escape Piper's midnight whining. My own bedroom had become Mia's home office, her laptop, papers, and takeout boxes lining every surface. My clients complained of hissing on video calls. Mia's Zoom background and loud typing sabotaged my professionalism. I found myself apologizing, rescheduling calls, and wearing noise-canceling earmuffs. My weekends disappeared. I spent Saturdays driving Mia to her new temp job 2 counties over, Sundays scrubbing Piper's muddy paws and scrubbing the emergency pancake batter off my stovetop. My social life evaporated. Friends stopped asking me out when I began canceling every invite. My savings, which I'd earmarked for a down payment, dwindled to nothing as I covered groceries, vet bills for Piper's upset stomach, which Mia claimed was from stress, and even Piper's new winter coat when she seemed cold. The ultimatum, mid-April 2025. By April 15th I snapped. I drafted a bulleted list. Move out deadline, May 1st, no exceptions. Reimbursement $950 for groceries, $120 for utilities overages, $80 for vet bills, and $150 for the damaged headphones. Total $1,300 by move-out. House rules. No more parties. Piper must be crated during work hours, and all personal items confined to the spare bedroom. I printed it, taped it to the fridge, and texted Mia. This is non-negotiable. I've been generous, but this house is my sanctuary. That evening I came home to find my living room filled with Mia's half-packed boxes. She'd texted, "Fine, I'll go," and left in a huff, but not before Piper chewed through my favorite floor lamp's power cord. The aftermath: Mia moved out on April 28th, 2 days early, but left me with chewed baseboards on the guest room door, a shattered floor lamp, and no attempt to pay for repairs. A final text accusing me of being the worst cousin ever and throwing us out on the street. A stream of social media posts about toxic family and family of origin trauma. My apartment finally feels quiet again, but the damage lingers. I had to call an electrician and pay $200 to replace that lamp. The guest room closet still has Piper's hair embedded in the carpet fibers. I've replaced my down pillow set because of mysterious staining. My own finances are in the red because I paid all of Mia's expenses for 6 months expecting her to reimburse me. My parents are divided. My mum says, "She's family, help her without conditions." My dad says, "You're an adult. You have a right to your boundaries." My best friend says I did the right thing by setting limits before I lost myself entirely. Now, I'm rebuilding. I'm rehiring a house cleaner, reclaiming my workspace, and refilling my savings. But I still feel guilty. Guilty that I forced her out, that I didn't do more, that I should have known better. I've offered Mia a short-term loan for her first month's rent at her new apartment, but she hasn't replied. So, Reddit, AITA for drawing firm boundaries, insisting my cousin and her dog move out and reimburse me after 6 months of temporary help that spiraled out of control, even though it meant protecting my home, my income, and my peace of mind. Author's note: Hey everyone, this one's a doozy, so buckle up. I'm really torn about how I handled things and would appreciate your perspective. Thanks for reading. Background: I'm P, 42F, and I work full-time as a nurse at our local hospital. My husband, K, 44M, is a firefighter, and we have 3 kids, ages 14, 10, and 7. My parents, Ma, 68F, and Pa, 70M, are planning their 45th wedding anniversary in mid-June, and I volunteered to coordinate a big family celebration at their favorite lakeside picnic area. I have one younger sister, R, 37F, who lives in another state. She's a high-powered attorney and tends to pull off elaborate events. Historically, we've had a competitive but loving relationship. We both want to make Ma and Pa feel special, but our ideas often clash. The anniversary celebration planned back in March, I reached out to Ma and Pa. Me: Mom, Dad, I want to throw you both a surprise 45th anniversary picnic at Lakewood Park on Saturday, June 14th. I'll handle food, decor, cake, everything. You just show up at 1 p.m. They love the idea. Over the next 2 months, I reserved the lakeside pavilion with a fire pit and picnic tables, hired a local caterer to serve your classic barbecue, ribs, pulled pork, grilled veggies, ordered a 3-tier strawberry lemon cheesecake, cake, bought custom linen table runners and string lights to hang around the pavilion, asked my neighbor, an amateur photographer, to snap candid family photos, created a photo slideshow of vintage family pictures to play on a portable projector. I told R via text that I was planning this picnic, and I invited her to join us in town on that Saturday afternoon. She replied, "Sounds lovely. Let me know if you need help." R's surprise fundraiser fast forward to early May. I got an email from R's assistant CCing my parents with a sleek PDF invite for a charity gala in honor of Ma and Pa, scheduled for Saturday, June 14th at 7 p.m. At the downtown event hall, R had apparently been quietly planning a black tie gala to raise money for Ma's favorite children's literacy charity and wanted to cap off the parents' anniversary with something elegant. The gala would include past hors d'oeuvres, live jazz, a silent auction, and a formal dinner. I was blindsided. R never mentioned the gala to me even when I asked if she wanted to help. I called her. Me. R, I just saw this gala invite. It's beautiful. But June 14th is the same day as the lakeside picnic I've been planning for Mom and Dad all along. R, hesitant. Oh, you're doing something that day? I thought you'd be free to help me host the gala. Me. R, I was coordinating with Mom and Dad since March, and they thought the picnic would be the main event. R, well, the gala is a surprise for them too. I didn't want to steal your thunder, but I thought you'd appreciate that it's for charity. The conflict, June 14th, 1 p.m. Picnic begins. We arrived at Lakewood Park at 12:45 p.m. I decorated the pavilion with the lights and table runners, while Kay set up coolers and the food station. Extended family and close friends trickled in by 1 p.m. My neighbor was snapping photos, and the kids ran around playing catch. Ma and Pa arrived, and everyone shouted, "Surprise!" They were delighted. The afternoon unfolded perfectly. We watched the slideshow, toasted with sparkling cider, and cut into the cheesecake. At around 3 p.m. I handed Ma an envelope, a handwritten family letter and plane tickets I'd bought for them to visit R for a weekend in July. Ma hugged me. P, this is perfect. Thank you. June 14th, 4 p.m. Gala invites surface at 4 p.m. My cousin S pulled me aside, looking a bit awkward. S, hey P, R just texted me that we're expected at a black tie gala downtown tonight at 7 p.m. for charity in honor of Ma and Pa. My heart sank. I hadn't RSVP'd and I only had my nurse's scrubs in the car. I'd rushed from work straight to the picnic. I rushed to find Kay. Me. Kay, did you know about this gala? Kay, nope. R's always been the overachiever. I texted R. Me. R, I'm so upset you didn't tell me about this. I can't even change or grab a suit, and our parents think this is the capstone of the celebration. Just your P, calm down, it's just a fundraiser. Wear what you have, come support charity together. Me, this was supposed to be Ma and Pa's day, like one cohesive event. Now they're bouncing from picnic to gala, and I'm left looking like a mess. She didn't respond. June 14th, 6:45 p.m. Race against time after. Cleaning up the picnic, Kay and I rushed home. I swapped scrubs for a sundress and jewelry. Kay changed into a sport coat. By 6:50 p.m. we pulled up to the gala venue, only to find the valet line snaking around the block. R greeted us at the door. R, you made it. I'm so glad. Me, quietly. We rushed, even rented a suit for Dad, but I wish you'd looped me in earlier so I could have planned too. R stuck a volunteer badge on me. Your co-host for the silent auction. Then she whisked me away. My reactions, I spent the next 2 hours flitting between tables, awkwardly auctioning off items I'd never seen, while Ma and Pa mingled with the charity board. The gala raised a significant sum, over $20,000, but I felt frazzled and overshadowed. Every time I tried to congratulate R, she was managing volunteers or chatting with donors. At one point, I cornered her behind the silent auction table. Me. R, I'm proud of you for pulling this off, but I'm hurt you didn't coordinate. With me, I planned 2 months for the picnic. R, defensive. I did plan, this is my charity event. I knew you'd want to run a silly picnic, but this is how I honor them. Me. The picnic was how I wanted to honor them too. We could have done a combined event. R. You always think everything has to be P's big show. I wanted my moment. She stormed off to greet a donor. The fallout by 10 p.m. The gala wound down. Pa hugged me and whispered, "The picnic and the gala. Best day ever." Ma held my hand and said, "You did wonderful." I realized they loved both parts, but I still felt stung by R's secrecy. Now, R is barely speaking. To me. She sent me a brief text next morning. "Thanks for showing up." I replied, "Let's talk when you're ready." No response. Kay thinks I overreacted. Ma says they were thrilled by both events, but I can't shake feeling like R intentionally sidelined my role. I'm debating whether to let it go or insist on a sit-down apology. Question for the community. AITA for being upset that my sister planned her own gala on the same day as the family picnic I'd been coordinating. Should I have reached out to combine efforts once I saw her plans? Is it unreasonable to expect her to include me in her charity event planning? How can I repair my relationship with R without minimizing either of our efforts? Thanks in advance for your honest judgments. P. 42F. I 31F. Have always considered myself generous. My friends joke that I'd give you the shirt off my back. So when my college roommate, Lena, 30F, called me last summer in tears, begging for a place to crash, I didn't hesitate. Lena and her husband, Carlos, 32M, had just fled their apartment after a brutal break-in that left them both shaken and their belongings stolen. With their savings gone on emergency hotel stays and Carlos unable to work, he'd hurt his shoulder defending Lena, they asked if they could move in with me for just a couple weeks until they got back on their feet. Week 1 to 2. The rescue. I live in a modest 2-bedroom townhouse in a quiet suburb. When Lena and Carlos arrived, I cleared out my guest room, bought fresh sheets and stocked extra pantry staples. I also gave them my spare car. Their old one had been stolen in the break-in, so they could commute to work and therapy. I told them they could stay as long as necessary. No rent, no deadlines. This was my way of making things right. The first 2 weeks went fine. Carlos iced his shoulder, Lena filed insurance claims, and they took turns cooking dinner and helping me with household chores. We commiserated over late-night cups of tea and therapy group anecdotes. I believed it would be a temporary blip. Week 3 to 6. The creep. Then things shifted. Lena started binge shopping on my Amazon Prime account, ordering candles, throw pillows, and overpriced self-care bath bombs without asking. Our electric bills spiked when Carlos began using my space heater in the living room, even though central heat worked fine, to ease his shoulder pain. I found my expensive coffee beans gone and replaced by grocery store grounds. When I mentioned the missing items, Lena laughed it off. Girl, relax, it's a small thing. Their nightly routine morphed as well. Early evenings, once reserved for decompressing in the garden, became endless game-streaming marathons in my living room. Friends of theirs, some I'd never met, started showing up unannounced, crashing on my couch or borrowing a toothbrush. I'd catch one of Carlos's buddies padding around in slippers, yawning at 3 a.m. week 7-10. Financial frictions. By week 7, I checked our joint checking account. My rent, utilities, and groceries should have been covered by my paycheck, but the balance was alarmingly low. Lena and Carlos had promised to reimburse me for groceries and any utilities over $100 per week, but nothing ever arrived. When I brought it up, Carlos said, "Our paychecks are late, just hang tight." I reminded them I had bills to pay too, my car note, my student loans, my own therapy sessions. Lena shot back, "You make more than us, you'll be fine." Tension seeped into my relationship with my fiancé, John, 33M. He loved helping his friends in crisis, but warned I was being taken advantage of. He watched me sacrificing weekends to drive Carlos to physical therapy, then covering the gas. He saw me folding laundry for 4 people instead of 2. I felt torn. It was Lena, my college bestie, in real need, but something about their entitlement was chafing. Week 11 to 14. The breaking point. One Saturday morning, John and I planned a rare brunch date. We'd invited his parents to celebrate his mom's birthday. I spent Friday night prepping quiche and mimosas, then woke to find Lena and Carlos had borrowed my key and were hosting a surprise birthday party in my home for their friend, Tom. 4 people were passed out on the floor, music gear strewn everywhere and confetti in the carpet. They'd used my good crystal glasses and never rinsed them. My quiche dish was cracked, and my antique champagne flutes had lipstick stains. Snapped. I confronted them, the tears, the apologies, the promises to clean up, but it was empty. Carlos shrugged. It was a special occasion, as if that excused trashing my home. Lena insisted I was overreacting. "We're family. You always said so." I realized I'd become the unpaid landlord, housekeeper, chauffeur, and ATM. That afternoon, John sat me down. "This is unsustainable. They've moved past crisis into entitlement." He urged me to lay down new ground rules, a firm move-out date, full reimbursement of expenses, and strict house rules. I agreed, terrified of destroying Lena's trust but desperate to reclaim my life. Week 15-18, the confrontation. I drew up a simple agreement. They'd pay me $500 per month toward utilities and groceries, arranged to move out by the end of week 18, and limit guests to one person at a time with advance notice. I printed it and handed them a copy. Lena's face fell. Carlos's brow furrowed. They refused to sign. Lena accused me of betrayal. After everything I've been through, you're kicking me to the curb? Carlos said, we thought you'd understand. Friendship isn't a contract. I told them calm but firm. I do understand your pain, but this is my home and my livelihood. I can't do this anymore without boundaries. They left the room slamming doors. I heard boxes being thrown into trash bags. The next day they came back with venom. Lena cried that I'd become cold and that our friendship was worthless to me. Carlos threatened to call his lawyer, implying I'd stolen their stolen stuff. My phone buzzed with angry texts accusing me of being a spoiled princess and the biggest a-hole of all time. Week 19-20 aftermath. They moved out midweek, late, dragging furniture, leaving food scraps. They never paid me a cent, despite my repeated invoices. I ended up paying an extra $200 in electrician's fees to fix the wiring mess from Tom's party, and spent a weekend deep cleaning. John gently reminded me that generosity is precious but finite, and that true friends wouldn't have exploited me so ruthlessly. A month later, I saw Lena's Instagram. Her apartment complex was sleek and new, her kitchen stocked with the very candles she'd ordered on my account. Carlos was back to work, smiling for a professional headshot. Not a word of thanks or apology. I felt a mix of relief and heartbreak. Relief that my home was mine again, heartbreak that friendship had curdled so completely. So Reddit. Am I the hole for kicking my college best friend and her husband out of my home and insisting on repayment, after I'd already given them shelter, transportation, and support? I, 30F, have always believed in the power of family. I grew up in a household where blood is thicker than water, and my parents raised me to drop everything for those I love. So when my husband, Ethan, 32M, and I married 2 years ago, I vowed that if either of our families ever needed help, we'd be there. I just never expected how costly that promise might become. The offer. It all started last November when Ethan's younger brother, Connor, 27M, called us from California, voice shaking. He'd lost his tech job in a massive round of layoffs, and his fiancée, Jenna, 28F, was still paying off her own student loans. Their savings had evaporated, rent was overdue, and eviction papers were on the way. They asked if they could move in with us in Chicago just until they got back on their feet. I didn't hesitate. Our 2-bedroom condo had a finished basement den that wasn't being used, and I was eager to help. Ethan agreed. He and I rearranged furniture, bought a second couch, and set up a makeshift bedroom for them behind a bookshelf divider. Early days. At first it was ideal. Connor and Jenna slotted right into our routine. They cooked dinner twice a week, pitched in on groceries, and even helped me set up my home office desk in the living room. On weekends we'd go for hikes in Lincoln Park, binge-watch crime documentaries, or host board game nights. They found freelance gigs quickly, and I felt proud to have saved my brother-in-law's relationship and career. I kept reminding myself it was temporary. 6 months, tops. The creep. By February, subtle changes began. Con and Jen were late on the rent money I'd waived for the first quarter. They said their clients were slow to pay. Fair enough, I knew cash flow could wobble. But then I realized they were treating our condo like a hotel. Dirty laundry strewn. In the hall, towels hung on every surface, takeout containers left for days. They started inviting friends over late at night, no questions asked, so our living room transformed into a mini-club, complete with booming music and empty beer bottles. When I gently reminded them that we had neighbors who worked early mornings, Jenna snapped, "We're adults, this isn't a daycare." Connor bristled, "Are you auditing our lives now?" I shrugged it off, tried to keep my voice even. Ethan backed me. "Hey guys, let's just be mindful of the volume." apologized, but the behavior didn't change. Financial fissures. Next came money. I'd agreed to cover utilities and groceries for the first 3 months. They'd pick up half of cable and internet and help with occasional groceries. But in March, our electric bill doubled, and I discovered they'd been leaving the heat, blasting 24/7. Their half of the April cable bill never arrived. When I asked, Connor said, "We're literally barely scraping by. We've had unexpected vet bills for our dog." Jenna added, "Sorry, we'll catch up next month." I sank into a pit of dread. Our own checking account was now dangerously low, and my freelance income was seasonal. Telling them we needed the money felt like throwing a bucket of water on a fire they'd set. Tension with Ethan tried to mediate. He reminded them that our generosity had limits, and that we needed to start saving for our own goals. A house down payment, vacations we'd postponed. Connor yelled back, "You're acting like you don't want us here." Jenna added, "We thought family was forever, not conditional." Their voices rose. Ethan opened his mouth, then shut it. I saw the disappointment in his eyes. He'd wanted to help his brother, but now it felt like betrayal. Our marriage began to fray. We argued at night about money and space. I'd come home from work to find the den covered in blankets and dog hair. I'd ask, "Whose mess is this?" and they'd roll their eyes. Ethan would tell me, "Let it go," but I couldn't. I felt my fairness antennae buzzing. We were footing the bill and cleaning up after them, and they were treating us like roommates rather than benefactors. The breaking point. By spring, my freelance deadlines were a mountain. Our account was nearly wiped out, and I hadn't had a night out with friends in months. One Saturday, I woke up to the smell of burnt coffee and pounding at our bedroom door. Connor had stepped into our sanctuary at 7 a.m., asking to borrow the blender for a smoothie before work. I groggily told him that if he needed it, he'd have to wait until the kitchen was free. He scoffed, "This is ridiculous," and slammed the door. That afternoon, I discovered our new batch of groceries, organic produce and artisanal cheeses, gone. They left one wilted head of lettuce in its place. Furious, I texted both of them. "I'm so disappointed. I expected more respect in my own home. We need to talk tonight." They replied with the infamous "fine" and whatever emojis. That evening at the dinner table, I laid it out. Our finances were drained, their mess was out of control, and this temporary situation had gone on for 5 months. I told them last week's cable and internet bill, plus a portion of rent for May, $900 total, was due tomorrow. I told them they couldn't blast the heat, and that if one more takeout container sat in the living room past 48 hours, it would be tossed. My voice was shaky but firm. Connor slammed his fist on the table. "You're evicting us? After everything we've been through?" Jenna burst into tears. Ethan looked torn between backing me and calming his brother. I'd never seen Connor that angry. His face was red, his voice loud enough to rattle our plates. He stormed out, pulling Jenna behind him. Ethan sat in silence, staring at his untouched pasta. Eviction and fallout. By bedtime they were gone, but not quietly. 2 middle-of-the-night messages from Connor accusing me of betrayal, of throwing them out to satisfy my white suburban comfort. Jenna texted that I was cold and ungrateful. In the morning, I found my favorite coffee mug shattered in the sink. I cried for an hour before I had to head to a client meeting. Ethan and I haven't been the same since. He spent the weekend packing up our shared storage unit because we can't risk them crashing at my mom's house again. He's quieter, more guarded, and I catch him checking my expressions like I've become unpredictable. My friends ask why I let them live here so long. I stammer and say, "I thought I could help." I'm ashamed that my kindness was weaponized, but also proud I finally stood up for my mental health and finances. Now, Connor and Jenna have found a sub-2-bedroom apartment 2 neighborhoods over, smaller, older, but theirs. They text once or twice a week, always polite but distant. Ethan's parents have warned us that family sticks together, but my own parents say I did the right thing by setting boundaries before I lost everything. I feel lost. Did I overreact? Should I have been more patient, more generous? Or am I finally learning that unconditional generosity has limits? So here I am, trying to rebuild our savings, mend my marriage, and reclaim my sense of home. But the guilt gnaws at me. Am I the a-hole for drawing a line and asking my brother-in-law and his fiancée to pay rent and clean up, after I'd already opened my home and heart to them? I, 32F, have never liked conflict, so when my childhood best friend Riley, 32Me, called me in tears last spring, I dropped everything without hesitation. Riley and I have been inseparable since kindergarten, sleepovers, summer camps, college, road trips. He married Avery, 30F, 2 years ago, and I've always adored her. So when Riley messaged me one evening, saying he'd just been hospitalized after a collapse at work, and Avery was overwhelmed juggling his recovery, plus their newborn daughter, Harper, 8 months, I immediately offered to move into their 2-bedroom condo until he was back on his feet. Their place was 30 minutes from mine, and I knew living with them full-time for a few months would strain my freelance business and personal life. But Riley's dad died 5 years ago, and I couldn't bear the thought of Avery facing this alone. I told my landlord I'd sublet my room for 3 months, packed a suitcase, and within days I was unpacking in Riley and Avery's guest room. I naively believed 3 months of extra hands and meals cooked would be a relief, but it quickly became clear I'd underestimated how hard the next months would be. Riley's recovery was slow. His collapse was caused by a rare autoimmune issue that weakened his muscles. He spent the first 6 weeks in and out of the hospital, hooked to IV drips and strapped into a wheelchair that barely got him to the bathroom. Avery was juggling breastfeeding, sleepless nights with Harper, daily hospital commutes, and managing their small family business online. I stepped in to clean the condo, floors, dishes, laundry, and I took over meal prep, grocery runs, and gift wrapping for Harper's baptism. I paid for takeout when supplies ran out, lent them my tablet so Riley could watch movies in bed, and held Avery's hand through tears when she confided she felt like she was failing at motherhood and marriage. By the end of month 2, I hadn't billed a single client. My own rent was on hold, my landlord generously deferred it, and my savings were dwindling to near zero. Riley was still in his wheelchair, Avery was still crying over every spilled bottle and every delayed physical therapy session, and Harper was restless in the guest crib I'd assembled in the living room. Grammy guilt set in when I realized I hadn't called my own parents in weeks, and my long-term relationship with my partner Jordan, 34M, was effectively on hiatus. Every evening I was too exhausted to text him more than, "Sorry, can't tonight." Then the bomb dropped. Riley's doctor delivered his prognosis in blunt terms. Full recovery would take at least 9 more months of intensive physical therapy, maybe a year, and possibly permanent limitations if his body didn't respond. The clinic offered him a subsidized apartment complex near the hospital for long-term rehab patients, but the waiting list was 6 months long. In the meantime, they urged him to find stronger support at home. Avery's parents lived across the country and couldn't help more than 2 weeks of babysitting a year, and Riley's only sibling was raising 3 kids of her own. That left me, so after a week of tears and reassurances, I agreed Riley and Avery should rent my place for the next 6 months once the subletter moved out, and I'd stay here with them until he could walk without assistance. I told myself this. Sacrifice would be worth it to preserve their marriage and health. Avery brightened at the idea of having her own home again. She hadn't cried in 2 days, but as soon as the subletter left, the condo felt like a prison. Riley's wheelchair barely fit through the kitchen, so every meal required me hauling in a folding table to the den. Harper's crib blocked the living room couch, so evening cartoons became a choreography of stepping over rails. I fell into a routine: shuffle groceries in the morning, wipe high-chair gunk off the cabinets at lunchtime, carry Harper on my hip, while changing Riley's wound dressings, whisper reminders to Avery to hydrate and eat. It was exhausting, but I told myself it was temporary. 3 months in, I realized I hadn't slept more than 6 straight hours in weeks. My freelance projects had piled up. Clients were calling, my emails unread, and when I tried to work, the wailing newborn, the squeaky wheelchair brakes, and the constant ding of text messages from Avery, asking "Where did you put the formula?" made concentration impossible. Jordan sent me polite messages about planning our anniversary weekend, but I couldn't even think about cake when I was scheduling Riley's 4 daily therapy sessions. My own mental health frayed. I confided in one friend that I felt trapped, and she gently suggested I set boundaries before resentment poisoned everything. But every time I tried, guilt flooded in. It wasn't as if I had a normal life to return to. It felt like I was choosing between two obligations. Then the breaking point came unexpectedly. One evening, after a 10-hour day of chauffeuring, Riley around appointments, I put Harper to sleep and called Jordan, sobbing through a string of apologies and explaining I couldn't keep doing this. Jordan flew in the next day and stayed in the guest room, and I left to take a real shower, in my own apartment. When I returned, warmed by a home-cooked meal from Jordan, I saw Riley in the kitchen, Avery in tears, and Harper crying again. I realized I hadn't stepped back in 3 months and hadn't questioned whether I should. That night, Jordan and I sat down with Avery. I said, "I love you both and I'll always be here, but I can't live like this anymore. It's destroying my career, my relationship, my sense of self." Avery cried, "But Riley needs you. Who else can handle his care? Who will soothe Harper when I can't?" I told her I would hire a licensed nanny and a home health aide, professionals with expertise, so that I could step back to friend and auntie. Riley, frustrated, said, "So you're saying you want your normal life back, and you don't care about mine anymore?" My chest tightened. I did care, but I also cared about my own future. The week I arranged for a part-time live-in nurse and a trusted nanny, I felt a mix of dread and relief. Avery's gratitude was muted. She kept saying, "I was walking away," when really I was insisting they invest in their own well-being. Riley withdrew, spending more time watching TV alone and less time texting me about his progress. I noticed Avery bristling whenever I cooked or cleaned now. They had helpers, and it felt like I was showing them up. Finally, Avery confronted me in the hallway. "I thought you were my sister. Now you're asking me to pay for my own support and it stings." I replied, "Of course you have to pay. This is what professionals do. This isn't charity. We're friends, not your parents." She said nothing more. When the lease on my apartment ran out, I moved back in there, subletting the guest room to a quiet retiree so I could maintain financial stability. The condo feels emptier than ever with only Riley, Avery, and their helpers, but they insisted I not come by more than twice a week. I respected their wishes, but the distance hurts. Riley is doing better physically, Avery seems less anxious, and Harper has grown into a spirited toddler who tugged at my arm the day I ran down to drop off a casserole, calling "Auntie," without a clue why I had to leave. My parents and Jordan both say I was right to reclaim my life and set limits. Avery's dad, who drove across the country after learning of my departure, called me selfish and cruel, saying family and friendship demand sacrifice. Riley hasn't called in weeks. When I texted, "How are you today?" I got only a thumbs down emoji. My heart aches. I miss helping them, but I also miss breathing. I worry I ruined our closeness forever. So Reddit, am I the a-hole for withdrawing? From full-time caregiving for my best friend and his wife, even though it meant protecting my mental health, livelihood, and my own relationships? Am I the a-hole for telling my wife? Her son can't live with us anymore after what he did to my daughter. I, 46M, have been married to my wife, Dana, 43F, for 6 years. We both had kids from previous relationships when we met. I have a daughter, Olivia, 16F, from my first marriage, and Dana has a son, Kyle, 17 May. Dana and I took things slowly when we got together, blending families gradually over a couple years before moving in together. At first, things were good. The kids were never super close, but they were civil and got along well enough for 2 unrelated teenagers living in the same house. Olivia is quiet, introverted, studious, and very sensitive, always has been. Kyle is more extroverted, sporty and popular, sometimes to the point of cockiness. That contrast occasionally caused friction, but nothing alarming. Over the years, I've noticed things that bugged me about Kyle, but I always chalked it up to teenage bravado. The way he sometimes teased Olivia for always having her nose in a book, or how he'd laugh if she got flustered when we had guests over. Dana said it was harmless sibling stuff. I even believed it for a while. But things escalated about a year ago. Kyle started making these jokes that crossed the line. He'd call Olivia sheltered, weird, or a prude. He told her once in front of his friends that she'd probably die a virgin in a library. Dana told him to knock it off, but she still brushed it off as boys being boys. I had more than one talk with Kyle myself. I made it clear his behavior wasn't acceptable, and for a while he dialed it back. But Olivia began withdrawing more and more. She stopped eating dinner with us. She'd come home from school and go straight to her room. She wouldn't invite friends over anymore. I asked her if Kyle was bullying her, and she always said no, but I could tell something was wrong. Then, 2 months ago, the bomb dropped. Olivia came to me crying, sobbing uncontrollably, shaking. It took a long time to get her to open up. And when she did, I was shaking too. She told me that Kyle had gone into her room when she wasn't home and taken pictures of her journal. She said he was reading it aloud to his friends at school and making fun of her for the things she wrote. Deeply personal things, some about her anxiety, some about her fears, even some about a crush she had. Apparently, one of his friends recorded it and posted a clip online, and it started spreading around school. Olivia was mortified. She'd been enduring the fallout quietly for weeks, whispers, snickers, people quoting lines from her journal in the hallway, until she finally broke. I was absolutely livid. I confronted Kyle that night, and at first he denied it. When I told him we had screenshots and that Olivia had already talked to the school counselor and principal, he rolled his eyes and muttered that it was just a joke and not that serious. No remorse, no real apology. I exploded. I told him he was cruel, that he violated someone's privacy in the most disgusting way. I told him he was grounded indefinitely and that I didn't want to see his face unless he was ready to truly make amends. Dana was shocked, but oddly defensive. She agreed what Kyle did was wrong, really wrong in her words, but she also started asking if Olivia was maybe being a little sensitive. I almost couldn't believe it. I asked her if she understood the trauma this caused. Olivia was begging to switch schools. She barely spoke. She couldn't sleep. And Dana was trying to level the blame. Things got even worse when I said Kyle needed to leave. Not permanently, but for a while. I wanted him to stay with his biological father, Dana's ex, until things settled. Dana freaked. She accused me of kicking her son out, of choosing my daughter over her family. I told her I wasn't choosing sides. I was protecting my child from someone who clearly had no regard for her mental or emotional well-being. I told her Kyle needed consequences. Real ones. Not just being talked to. She cried. She said she felt betrayed, but I didn't back down. Kyle left the next day after a screaming match between Dana and me. She went with him to stay a few days with her sister and didn't speak to me for over a week. In that time, I focused on Olivia. I got her into therapy, worked with the school to make sure the clip was taken down and disciplinary action was taken, and spent time trying to help her feel safe again. Slowly, she started smiling again. She thanked me for standing up for her, and I can't even put into words how much that meant to me. Eventually, Dana came home, but things have been tense ever since. She wants Kyle to come back. I said not until he's shown real remorse and done serious work on himself, therapy, counseling, whatever it takes. She says I'm being extreme. She's angry that I'm judging her son too harshly and says I've created a division that might never heal. I told her the division wasn't created by me. It was created the moment Kyle decided to humiliate and emotionally abuse my daughter, and then show zero remorse. Now, some extended family is getting involved. Dana's parents say I've overstepped, and that I'm alienating Kyle when he needs guidance. My own brother said I might be setting the kids up to hate each other forever, and that they're teenagers, they screw up. But Olivia has been hurt in a way that can't just be glossed over, and Kyle's never once tried to apologize directly to her. Not a letter, not a word, just defensive excuses. Dana says our marriage is on the line, that she can't be married to someone who thinks her child is a monster. I told her I don't think he's a monster. I think he's a cruel, entitled teenage boy who needs serious intervention. I love her, but I will not sacrifice my daughter's safety and emotional well-being for the sake of appearances. Olivia deserves to feel safe in her own home. She deserves a father who puts her first when anyone, hurts her this badly, even if that someone is her stepbrother. So now I'm sitting here, alone in our bedroom, wondering if I'm doing the right thing. My daughter is finally starting to heal, but my marriage is cracking under the weight of this. And part of me is asking the hard question, am I the a-hole for telling my wife her son can't come back into our house, even if it means the end of our marriage?